So this is the Town of Wellington Board of Finance budget meeting. It's May 16th, 2024, and the meeting is called to order. We will start with seating alternates. It'll be necessary to seat an alternate because Jeff Krusak is not in tonight. So I'd like to make a motion that Melissa be seated in his spot. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays, nay. Abstentions, is unanimous. Next we'll move on to approval of minutes. We're gonna start with the March 28th, 2024 minutes, which they have been approved before. But we would like to adopt some changes to it. So this says, I had a minute today to read the minutes of your March 28th budget meeting, and I wanted to let you know that I saw 4 corrections. I believe the minutes were be approved, but if you could accept the corrections at your next meeting on May 16th, I would appreciate that. Number 1 is on page 12, the motion to accept the budget request for 0231 fire marshal was $27,168. It should have been $25,168. Number 2 on page 13.
Bruce, excuse me, who's this from?
Donna sent it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's see that.
Number 2 on page 13, the motion to accept the budget request for the Board of Education was $9,933,775. It should be $9,877,772. Number 3, general government was $7,201,808. It should be $7,199,808. And number 4, total expenditures were $21,792,742. It should be $21,735,439. So I would like to make a motion to accept the corrections that's listed, unless anybody wanted to discuss that.
Well, so did we read the numbers wrong or were the numbers wrong? At the time,
I believe you read the numbers correctly. They just got picked up on the worksheets, like from the wrong column,
oh, okay,
so. It's
so,
not in the minutes wrong, but what was said during the meeting was correct.
oh, okay,
What
okay,
was said during the meeting was correct.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because the minutes should be what was said in the meeting,
Yes, the minutes should be what said was the
Okay.
meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody else?
So we're only changing it in the written document, but it was correct and I'm not sure what we're changing if
The recording
was said
right.
Recording is correct, written document is transposed.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you for that shorthand.
All right, I'll make a motion that we accept these changes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions?
One abstention was absent.
Okay. Both abstained. All right, next we have the meetings from April 4th. No, April 10th, 2024. And are there any changes that anybody sees that are necessary for these meetings?
Are you gonna start with the budget hearing? Like, should we do those separately or? One's a special meeting, one's a budget hearing. Or,
You could do the hearings first.
okay. I had a couple changes on page 2. It's like the second, well, actually the 3rd paragraph. And then again, the 5th paragraph under solicitation of questions. Arthur Christensen's last name is S-E-N, and I think we should change it. He's on the Board of Ed. It gets butchered just because it's an unusual spelling. There's on page 3 down where it says the paragraph, second penultimate one says, Mr. Lawler noted that the library loan is nearly paid off, and I think you meant bond. It's just a typo. And then I think in the paragraph following that, it refers to James Mitchell. I think it means James Marshall, who's earlier in the minutes, identified. But I don't think it's a James Mitchell who made the point about the CIP mill rate, impact on the mill rate.
No, that's James Marshall.
Yeah. That's it.
Anybody else? Right, I have a motion to accept that.
I'll make a motion for something.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? So, unanimous. And next to the budget or the Board of Finance meeting for April 10th. Any changes necessary? Any comments on that? Yeah, so, all right, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as they are. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The abstentions, unanimous. All right, next we go on to present to speak. Public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited to time and appropriateness of comments to maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain decorum. And do we have anybody this evening for present to speak? Peter?
Thank you. Dave Tanaka, 125 Mason Road, first selectman. I think we all did a good job coming to a budget which we thought was acceptable to us. I don't think that budget was found acceptable to the town as it was voted down. I just want to caution board when they come up with new numbers for what we're gonna be voting on, not to be election deniers. I've seen the movement on both sides of the aisle to deny elections, and I don't think that serves the town well. We can't ignore what our legislative body has told us. I believe the last time we had a referendum fail was more than 20 years ago. And at that time, the instinct was the right people didn't vote. Now that it's gone down, the next time people that support it would vote. And I believe that time it failed worse than it did the first time when there was no changes. So all I'm asking is that you listen to the voters and amend those numbers. I'm not saying cut the numbers. I'm saying amend the numbers. If you think that it was too low, let that be known. If you think it was too high, let that be known. But I think we need to change those numbers in some way. And I'm here tonight to find out what the new number I'm working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else for present to speak? Peter?
Peter Wiltinchich, 97 Trask Road. Good evening to everyone. I wanted to comment also on the referendum. We are living in a time of great economic distress. It's post-COVID economy. The national media is reporting that many Americans are now growing their own food due to the skyrocketing costs of food and other groceries. Something Wellington residents, I would add, have done for a long time, which makes me wonder where they go from here. And I tried to say this during your budget process. I kind of did frequently at Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen meetings. And try to suggest to you that some kind of cost of living increase is something the town budget would need to work with. An 8.6% increase is far beyond that. And the referendum reflects that, I think. So your task tonight is to get somewhere in a range that our struggling residents can afford. And it's instructive to note that Collins' budget referendum failed at 4.98%. Coventry's also failed. So we're not alone, it's just not atypical. But I would ask you, as in the first selection, to respect the electorate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Ralph, yeah, Ralph Tillis, 47 Village Hill Road. I want to relay a message from my wife, who scrutinizing a few things in the budget. And one of the things that, as two people who are retired, relatively fixed income, we don't get raises. But the one thing she singled out was park recreation department. In 2016, their budget was 48,000. Round numbers. I'm not going to get to the dollar. 2018, it jumped by 10 grand. 2020 to 69. 2022, $96,000. It doubled since 2016. Okay. Parks and Rec, it's a nice feature for any community. But unless you're willing to start freezing taxes for those of us who are on fixed incomes, it's a frivolous, not completely frivolous, but a partly frivolous feature of our town. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't have it, but I think we need to be mindful at what it's costing us per capita to continue to expand and increase the cost of Parks and Rec. It's just one item out of many on your budget. I did not have the opportunity to sit down and look at the history of our proposed budget. I'm sure I could find a couple other places where our increases reflect not only needs, but often reflect wants. And we need to be very cognizant of the wants versus the needs and proceed accordingly. And I hope you will consider that when you take another look at the numbers.
Thank you. Appreciate the points that you made. I'm sure a lot of people in the community feel the same way. Yeah.
Jim Gulick, Laurel Drive, just want to echo some of the comments that Peter Tanaka made earlier. I've been fairly quiet about our budget process up until this point, referring to have you guys work through what you're able to work through and then bring it before the electorate. But I think at this point, they made it very clear that the 8% plus increase that we bought by them was far too. And we're seeing again similar budget referendums around us go down at Holland, I think was 4.8%, somewhere around there. So I mean, you guys need to be mindful about where our grand list is growing, where do we think inflation is running, and probably set spending to something more realistic, like around that rate, somewhere around there. And I urge you, please consider that, particularly for the many people who are on fixed income or didn't get the 8% raises at where they work. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. All right, Matt Clark.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, we're not, as Peter indicated, we're not the only town that has had the referendum voted down. So we tried hard. A lot of people worked very hard. And the turnout was, disappointing at 16 or 17%. We at Board of Selectmen decided in our last meeting, or at least talked about in our last meeting, and sort of agreed that we would send out a notice to townspeople next year. My apologies for not doing that this year, so that the turnout was higher. I hope the Board of Finance members will compromise in good faith tonight to arrive at a fair and equitable budget that is acceptable to our townspeople. The ones who are well off, the poor, the old, the young, so that everyone can come together and vote yes on this. Insisting on no change or a tiny change in the budget amounts is not leadership. I hope we can not do that. That would not be good. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back.
Thank you, Mark. Matt? Nick?
Hey, Nick Tella, 49 Myrtle. I'm disappointed that the boards across all boards didn't see this. They're not in touch with what's going on and what people are thinking and feeling. To have an 8.6% mill rate increase even come to the voters is insane. Obviously, a lot of this is driven, it seems to be, from the schools, and I think every board needs to look at making their own reasonable cuts. The Board of Education really needs to come up with something where they're not driving the mill increase like this. We've seen, I think it was up in Infield. They're looking at, unfortunately, giving teachers pink slips. It's a tough reality that many communities are having to deal with, and it's the reality of life. I mean, the Fed doesn't even know what's going on with inflation. There's 6 cuts, this, that. Now they can't even cut. People are hurting, and to send back a mill rate increase of really anything over 4%, I think is insane. But I hope you guys are able to discuss this and come up with a good plan, and I wish you guys well going through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Jim Marshall?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jim Marshall, Fisher Hill Road. Despite all of the discussion and comments in the room thus far, what I gathered from all of this budget process was a general lack of participation and also a lack of ideas, both in how to arrive or derive the original budget, but also now, with every comment in this room, suggestions as to how we get to some arbitrary percentage increase number that we feel makes us all feel better, while also ignoring the needs of all of the boards in town that worked very diligently without any feedback from the community, without a lot of comments from many of the people in this very room throughout the process. They all worked very diligently to come up with a budget that they felt was reasonable, that was supported by all boards. Even to Pete's comment, during the budget meeting, I greatly recall him sitting there arguing to maintain an additional $300,000 in spending for the selectmen's budget that the Board of Finance was asking to cut. The methodology here, where we can just pick an arbitrary number and think it's going to be adequate to actually serve the needs of the town, is a false argument on its face. Same applies. So I'll leave it at that for now, because I'm sure there are others that'll speak more eloquently than I'm doing. But I just want to speak up in support of the budget generally as submitted. I know there's still room for tweaks, but any drastic changes to hit this arbitrary mill rate is going to dramatically cut services in town. It's going to cause significant impact to many of the boards and many of the services residents expect. So I'd ask you to seriously consider that as you look at this budget. I think you guys did a great job in the first pass. I think you know that you did a good job in the first pass, and that there isn't a hell of a lot room to really maneuver this anywhere near the levels that the pie in the sky percentages I heard thrown out so far tonight can get to. So I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope there's more participation from the community, because since the referendum, there's been no views of any of the meetings on YouTube. There was a whopping, I think, 11 people at the Board of Ed meeting on Tuesday night where they were discussing their budget. So we got a no vote, but we have no ideas or suggestions as to how to get to something beyond, oh, we need a lower number. So thank you very much, everybody. I wish you the best in working through this.
Thanks, Jim. Brianna Ross.
Hi, sorry.
We see ya.
Hi there. Can you hear me all right
Yep.
now and see me good? Sorry. Okay, hi. This is Brianna Ross, Chair of the Board of Education. Tonight, I'd like to address those of you there at the meeting, as well as the folks who will be watching this meeting later in its recorded format. The board members continue to unanimously stand behind our needs-based and carefully assembled budget, and we are hopeful that more citizens and voters will get involved now. We are asking for the bare minimum because we know that the town has many other needs to address this time around. People need to know that a huge percentage of our proposal is made up of things that are legally and contractually mandated. As you know, another major driver is the unexpected and rare situation whereby we are responsible for the education of 6 students in an outplaced setting next year. The special education portion of our budget, which is Program 3, makes up approximately 5% of the proposed 7.3% increase. And yes, that number may sound new to you, and I'm certain Mr. Stevens will speak to that this evening. In the last 5 years, our percentage increases have been 4.67%, 1.98%, 1.14%, 1.26%, 0.85%. We have also returned $602,464 to the general fund in the last 4 years. History proves that we focus on need and that we are mindful of the financial impact on Willington citizens. Speaking of whom, after the new school was voted down, it became clear that people wanted us to care for the current buildings instead, which is why we included a facilities director in this budget. We want to make sure that it's done right. We believe in our budget. And as I said, our board members hope to see more community engagement going forward. We are team players with the best interest of Willington's children on our minds and also in our hearts. And if you're in the room tonight and you have an opportunity, take a look at those trifolds behind you there and the posters. Those were given to the Board of Education by students at Hall Memorial and Center School, thanking us for the hard work we do. And I think that thank you extends not just to us and our board, but to all of us as Willington citizens. Those are our future. That's our responsibility. Let's make sure that they're getting everything that they need. Thank you.
Thanks, Brianna. Michelle Doucette Cunningham.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the Board of Finance for the hard work you put
Excuse me, Michelle.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just for the record, could you state your name and your address?
Sorry, sure. Michelle Doucette Cunningham, 41 Liska Road. I wanted to start by thanking the Board of Finance for the amount of time and energy you put into putting this budget together, and also the Board of Education. All of the different departments, there's been a lot of time and energy put towards creating a budget that then went to referendum. I think it's important to note that while I am not denying the outcome of the election, I would agree with Mr. Marshall that what I take away from the election is that people assumed it was going to pass because it has passed every year for the past 20 years. The difference was less than 50 votes. It was 27 votes for the general government, and 42 votes for the education budget. I don't think that tells us anything other than people got information the way they have most recently, which is through Facebook, through talking to other people. But I don't think they're engaged. They're not coming to meetings. They're not on this call right now. They're not watching the videos. They're getting information in other ways than they did 20 years ago, the last time this didn't pass. And some of that is through Facebook. And I will be quite honest that I was very disturbed at what I read on Facebook. The misinformation about this, yes, it's an 8% increase this one year, but you didn't put that into context Over the past 5 or 10 years, the number of increases we've had have been very minimal. And you have to put it over time. Some years you're going to give money back. Other years you're going to take a bigger hit, because in a small district, in a small town, some years you have bigger expenses. If you're doing an honest budget and starting from scratch each year, like we do, then some years it's going to be a little higher and other years it's going to be a little lower. And you just have to take that into effect. And just playing the percentage number and pushing that over and over again on Facebook is wrong. It's incomplete information, and it's pushing an agenda that I think does a horrible disservice for our children, for our services, and for the people in town. Now, one thing that you want to think about is the one times we have gotten hundreds of people out at public meetings. I've been in that room where it's been standing room only out to the hallway. We've had other meetings. It's when you want to start cutting budgets. You want to cut services at the senior center, cut library hours, cut classroom teachers, and increase class size. Do you want to revolt from the town? That's what's really going to get people out. And we will have a big turnover and change in government if things start cutting. And I think it's also, I want to call out another point of, I think that was misinformation. And it's not to say that certain people in town aren't hurting. I recognize that. There are people who don't all work, who don't all have increases in their annual every year. They don't get raises. However, to say that people on fixed incomes don't get raises is wrong. Social Security is increased every year. In 2021, it was 5.9%. In 22, it was 8.7%. Last year, it was 3.2%. So while it's a fixed income, it is still increased for a cost of living. Everyone deserves an increase for cost of living, including all of the employees who work for the town and the school system. And we have other requirements, such as taking care of our infrastructure. If you really want us to take care of the buildings, like people have been saying all year, then you have to invest in taking care of the buildings. So let's have an honest discussion about what this is going to cost, and accept that some years there's going to be an increase. I think if anything, what we put forward in the most recent budget was more of a right sizing. Our taxes have always been lower than many of the others in similar towns in Connecticut. This is just increasing it up. We're not becoming a high tax town. We were just moving up closer to what was the norm in other places. So I wish we would tell the whole story and not take any false information or one opinion without looking at the entire picture. So I wish you luck this evening as you consider this. And I think you should not take away that this was a bad budget just because 42 and 27 people didn't like it based on bad information. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Do we have anybody else present to speak? No, we're gonna move on to, there is no old business, so we'll move to new business. First on here is presentation of account to transfer to the suspense list by Janice Watson, Revenue Collector. Is she present?
Here
Hi,
I am.
Janice.
How are you?
Doing good.
So the list I sent over, I think everyone has a copy, I hope. This is just, as we do every year, we have to give a list of what we deem as uncollectible taxes. A lot of these motor vehicles stem from international students. They come here in, August, buy a car. We don't even know they purchased the car and they're already gone by the time we get a bill and find that they've already gone back to whatever country they've come from. I had quite a few businesses this year that either gone out of business, have forfeited the business. So a lot of that personal property was uncollectible. As far as things due this year on the motor vehicle side, these would be any deceased persons that obviously unable to pay the bill. Their estates have been closed, so we deemed those uncollectible. Anything that is transferred to the suspense list is still collectible up to 15 years. It's just we don't carry it like on the, technically on the book. So these accounts have been sent to a collection agency. If they get paid, they forward the funds on to us, and some of these will get paid eventually. So this year we're looking at 19,951.14. It's about on average what we've been doing the past couple of years.
All right, Janice, we don't have a copy of your report in front of us.
I'm so sorry. So let me go through it. What I had sent over was for 2022 motor vehicle. I am sending over $813.16. This is again for deceased motorists that the estates have been closed or they were the only one on the actual vehicle. On personal property 2021, a lot of these businesses have closed or forfeited the business. It could be for anything they had in the business, furniture, sometimes motor vehicles come under that. Motor vehicle for 21 was $1,679.95 for the total of 2021, $3,215.68. For 2020, personal property, $925.36. Again, one of those, I believe, is a bankruptcy that we can no longer collect on. Some of the other ones, they're from the prior years that these are just, they've gone out of business, so we have no way. A lot of them too, will close the business, will leave, and we don't know where they go. So motor vehicle for 2020, $3,883.41. Motor vehicle supplemental is $370.58 for a total of 2020 for $5,179.35. For 2019, personal property, $2,635.91. Motor vehicle, $4,597.47. Motor vehicle supplemental, $1,089.90 for a total in 19 of $8,323.28. And lastly, a couple for 2018, personal property, $583.46, and motor vehicle, $1,836.22 for a grand total of 2018 of $24,968, which brings the grand total to $19,951.14 for the year. And I can also, if you want, I can get a copy of this on Monday. I can send it out to whoever wants to take an actual look at it.
But yeah, Janice, if you send a copy to me, this is Bruce Lawler, the chair.
Yep.
Send it to me and CC Donna on that.
Okay.
We'll make sure that the board gets that, okay?
Okay, perfect.
Any questions for Janice? No. No? Okay, we're all set, Janice. Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Good evening. Next, we have the appointment of the auditor, Donna Liptink-Six.
Yes, you have in your packet a proposal from Mahoney Sable for auditing services. So we're due to appoint an auditor, and normally I would write up an RFP and I would direct solicit auditing firms that do comprehensive audits. And there's really three big firms that do the comprehensive audits. And in the past, I have direct solicited all three companies. And one company has declined to bid us. And another company bid and came in 30% higher than Mahoney Sable. So I have a proposal from Mahoney Sable for a new 3-year contract that I am hoping you will approve for the town. Any questions that I can help you with?
Those increases are just like 5% across the board every year.
It's 5% year 2 to year 3. The first year is a bit of a bump, 11%. And Andy explained it's the cost of his employees and the cost of technology and just the cost of doing business. Year 2, 5% increase, year 3, 5% increase.
And the first year is 11.
The first year is 11.
That would work in our budget.
Any other questions for Donna?
So we had a decline bid and then the other one was 30% higher.
Yes.
So,
Any other questions or comments?
I think we have the best deal.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, but it's an action item and I do need a motion.
Okay, so the BOF, I motion that the BOF appoints the firm of Mahoney, Sable and Company for professional auditing services for the town of Wellington for fiscal year ending 2024 for $48,000, fiscal year ending 2025 for $50,400, and fiscal year ending 2026 for $52,900. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, thank you, Suzanne.
Steph.
Steph, I'm sorry. It started with an S, though I was close.
Oh, now we can apply that to our budgeting.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstention? Unanimous. Thank you. Next, number 3, April 2024 financial report, again by Donna.
It's the usual one-page summary with revenues at the top and then followed by expenditures. And you'll notice that every revenue category has exceeded the budget for revenue. So we're favorable on revenue right now, $549,000. And I know everyone's working hard to keep on budget with their expenditures.
Any questions for Donna?
Can I ask,
Yes.
these, like, 3 months ago, how much did we think it was gonna be over? Because I'm just wondering about our fund balance
Yes,
and if this favorable, this information we have now,
yes,
is that, does that change our picture a little bit?
yes. So I did update the memo for the Board of Finance on the fund balance forecast. And it does change the forecast. And so you have the new memo in your packet. And you'll see that I'm forecasting at the end of the year to have $3.1 million in the fund balance. And in fact, I reworked the appropriation that you could apply to the budget. And you had set it at 700 and I increased it 700,000. I increased it to 900,000.
Okay,
Because I think you're going to have it.
and that would leave us in the 10% range.
Yeah, exactly, 10.2%.
Well, that's good.
Where do you show that?
So on the
Is that-
bottom, there's a table that shows,
Oh,
where
okay.
where I show the 10.2%.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you mean you're already plugging that into a calculator? I mean, to the
I did
calculator?
that, put it in the mill rate calculator,
Okay.
so that when you like start making your adjustments on the expenditure side, you have 2,000, 200,000 more on the revenue side.
Any other questions for Donna?
And I just wanna also tell you that next year's budget in interest income, we budgeted for $197,000 in interest income. That was a suggestion at one of the board meetings. And so I put it in the budget to get that much. I think it's gonna be okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Donna. Next, we'll move on to discuss reconciliation of fiscal year 2024 to 2025 budget. You all have the letter that Peter Tanaka sent out, which addresses Stafford, the path that they took I'll just read through it. So, step one. The Board of Finance meets and determines the amended bottom lines of the town government budget and Board of Education budget. The Board of Selectmen meet to determine the line items to be amended in the general government budget. Step two, the Board of Selectmen presents the amended budget to the Board of Finance. Step three, the Board of Finance meets and recommends that the Board of Selectmen call the town meeting. As far as he can determine, the Board of Finance can do that at the meeting where the Board of Selectmen presents. Step four, the Board of Selectmen meet and on the recommendation of the Board of Finance calls a town meeting that is properly warned, held and adjourned to referendum. Step five, referendum is held not less than 7 or more than 14 days after the town meeting. Note, should the budget not pass by mid-June, the Board of Selectmen set a mill rate for the tax collector to use until one is set following a passed budget, after which the tax collector will send a supplemental bill. Anybody have any comments on that?
I have a question about that. I'm just wondering about the, well, a couple things, but I'm wondering about, in the process part, I'm wondering about whether we need to have a budget hearing. Even if we don't have a budget hearing, I think there should be some, deeper attempt at explaining the budget than we usually do, than we did this first round. And, I'm wondering about the time span, how quickly we could track it, because I feel like we really have less than a month to make a fiscal year smoothly and let people notify, and let the tax collector do her work. So it just feels like it's a pretty tight amount of time just coming from May 16th to something that needs to be up and running by July 1st. The biggest question I have other than that is the number 7, which is if there's not a budget by mid-June, the Board of Selectmen set the mill rate. I think it's a temporary mill rate. I really feel like that sounds like a Board of Finance function. Because we're the ones that are weighing all the financial issues of the town and also working as closely with the Board of Ed as we are with the Board of Selectmen and the town budgets. And I feel like that's a role that should be Board of Finance. And I'm wondering if we need like our town attorney to sort of weigh in on process rather than kind of crib off another town.
How was it handled here when the last one failed?
In the 90s?
Yeah.
Does anyone know?
Everyone says 20, it was over 30 years ago.
So how was it handled? It must be record.
I don't know. Yeah,
It must be in the record someplace.
Do you remember, Pete?
Yes, my recollection is that the previous year's budget was the budget level, but there was a supplemental tax increase for mandatory spending items that impacted the town.
Any ideas on moving forward?
Janice is trying to write it in.
Hi.
James?
Hi, it's Shannon. I just wanted to mention, normally what happens if the budget does not pass, last year's mill rate is used for the first bills to go out, and then a supplemental bill is sent for anything additional, as Peter was mentioning.
and the Board of Selectmen sets that mill rate.
I believe the reason, oh, go ahead, Janice.
No, I was just gonna say, it's just, as far as I understand it, and I can just double check the statute on it, we would just use last year's mill rate,
32.16.
the 32.16.
I think what they mean by the Board of Selectmen set the mill rate is Board of Selectmen say, we're gonna use last year's mill rate.
Right.
I think that's all that goes into that, the thinking on
The
that.
legislative body
Right,
setting the mill rate. We told you what it is when we voted.
yeah.
Hmm. No, you didn't.
No, the Board of Finance had said it after the referendum last year, so. Because I believe that's the way it works, right? The-
Yeah.
the
Normally, we
budget
would be
passes
setting
and then
it
you set the
tonight.
mill rate.
Yeah,
So, I think the reason that it says the Board of Selectmen set the mill rate is just so that you don't have to have an emergency Board of Finance meeting so that we can just tell Janet, use last year's number until such a time as you can send out a.
But could you also tell Janice to reduce it by a mil or add a mil?
I probably could, I don't see where the, because the adjusted mill rate comes out in January. It plus or minus a mil. Although if the referendum is for, let's use a ridiculous number, a 90% increase, you might want to add 50% to the mill rate, so you're close,
Right.
closer.
Right.
But I don't see it being more than a 3 or 4 mill rate difference from where it is now. So why wouldn't you just leave it at last year's rate? I think the reason it was left to the Board of Finance stuff is just for speed. And make sure it happens by June 15th, so that
Right. But you guys, I mean, your normal meetings, you would have to do a special meeting, I would say we have the flexibility to do that. I'm more asking what that might, if precedent setting wise, or just, in the scheme of things, does that create something that, the Board of Selectmen don't normally do, or, I mean, I don't know, I'm just raising the question.
Right, I
The way it
believe
would be.
so the state law doesn't give a huge amount of guidance, and neither does town ordinance. So you have to find a path that doesn't bump either one of those guardrails. And I thought that this was the easiest way to go, was to use the experience of our surrounding towns.
I just kind
Instead
of,
of reinventing.
yes, I think it's a reasonable step in this scenario, given that it is new to us. Pretty much new to most people in the room and beyond, to check with our town attorney, have a, a sort of good Q&A and, what are the issues of that? What are the issues of where it comes from? It's one of those things that I just don't wanna, it feels new to me. I've only been here since '96, so I wanna know about the, the right steps to take and if there's some alternative suggestions to the way to do it. That's all.
So can I suggest something, that we start with step 1 through 5, let Peter talk to the town attorney regarding the, I know you have at the bottom. About who sets the mill rate. Anybody have any objections to that?
Are we adopting something or are we just
Yeah,
kind of
if-
saying this is the way
Yeah,
we're?
well, I'm asking if there would be any issues with any of the members that we adopt step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That we do that now, so that we're able to discuss.
Well, so step 1 says that we're just gonna tell them what the bottom line is.
Yeah.
Without hearing from them.
Mhm.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, we've heard from them.
Yeah, we heard what they need. And we passed that through.
Well, I don't know if
So
we've
it-
heard what they need or what they want.
Okay, but how do you know how much to cut? And how do you know what they're gonna do once they make that cut? I can't vote on something if I don't know what's gonna, like, or have any idea what they're gonna do. But also, we don't know what number we're trying to get to. So shouldn't we talk about that first? I don't know.
The thing is, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I respond?
Yes, yeah.
I think when we came to you with our needs. We didn't come to you, we came to you with what we thought were our needs. The thing is, we need to have a bottom line number that we think will pass a referendum. I don't think that either Phil or I have any better an understanding of what that number is than the elected officials sitting at this table. And I think that's why you were elected, was to make those really hard choices, and sometimes you don't have the data set you need. So what you're doing with Phil, you have very, I think it's no say over how he spends his budget once you set that number. That's why he doesn't need to report back to you. For me, you do have some say over that. That's why I need to report back to you how I'm gonna spend or make those cuts. And that's, so you're in a bad spot. I understand that. I would desperately like to throw you a life preserver that I don't have. I don't know what that number is either.
What's the average that shows up in percent wise every other year? That, what's our usual turnout on a budget vote? I know it's low.
This was higher than usual.
Yeah, that's
But
what I
there was
thought.
some,
So.
there was some election day texting going on to encourage people to vote the budget down. And there was day before texting happening, systemic texting. So I think that's I'm gonna call it a manipulator that isn't normally there. So I think that was new to the field, but it's, Christine's right here, I mean, as far as normal turnout, how it compares.
I think it was a little bit higher this year. It's usually around 13-14% turnout.
What's
And
the
this was
actual number?
16.5 here,
Now, so
600 votes, 596.
the number of eligible voters last week was over 3,600. 599 people voted.
So that's 1/6 of the electorate, which makes me feel like of the people who showed up, there was a message sent. It was a 53% vote. That wasn't a landslide anyway. But it's also 1/6 of the electorate. So I just feel like it's a mistake to kind of go, oh my God, they've really spoken. No one at this table and no one at any of the other board tables involved in the budgeting said anything like that. They thought that this was an easy year. I just want to say a couple of framing things, and one of them is what the school budget's dealing with, folks. Is we usually have 2 special ed outplacement students a year. Sometimes, I think we've had as many as 3. This year, there's an expectation of 7. It's not something that's going to go away overnight. And it's definitely, these are to the tune of like 150K a person, a kid, to handle outplaced students. So if you multiply that times 7, that's over $1 million of impact. I'm not saying that's what the impact is in this budget, because the school budget, because Phil and the Board of Ed worked aggressively and had some things already that they did before they even brought that impact forward, so we didn't all have to call our cardiologist. So I just feel like that's the context of the nature of this budget versus any other I've seen in the time I've been here. And I think it's unreasonable to say, oh, we're just gonna have to eat all that impact. That is state mandated, it's cost, it's a cost that I don't think anyone would disagree needs to be handled responsibly. I mean, we need to do it. The question about how you can shave that down, I mean, the state legislative session just ended last week. They talked about this on the floor and during appropriations. There was an $80 million nut, I think, Phil, you correct me if I'm wrong, that was sent to the towns for the cost of special ed outplacements. It was, they talked about how can they shave some of this down or whatever. What the net was 80 million in the state of Connecticut. So the ECS is under 5,000 a kid. It's like, we're not getting much help. I was looking at Donna's numbers or some of the other stuff, it looked like our grant, you know, on our revenue picture, the grants year over year, federal and state are at 1% growth, right? What we're getting toward the budget. It's not like anyone's sitting around going, this is what I want, and it brings my budget up 8.6% or whatever. That's not what happened here. So I'm a little ticked at any characterization that there's a loud, angry response. I understand it's a passionate response, but it's not that people are playing fast and loose with the figures, folks.
Well, you know, I mean, you started off your whole thing by saying that the voters were manipulated on social media to come out and vote the way that they voted.
No, I
And-
didn't
and-
mention social media. I think.
Well,
Christina
okay,
did.
so they were actually still sitting there.
Texting.
Yeah,
Okay, and then you say that, or it's implied that because only 1/6 of the electorate came out to vote, that somehow it's invalid the way that they voted because 5/6 of the voters did not come out to vote. When the fact of the matter is that 1/6 of the public decided to take the time out to come out and vote in the referendum, while the rest chose not to. So that's like saying that when you have a general election, that if the majority of the people don't come out and vote, that it's an invalid election.
I'm not
Because the
saying that
majority
at
did
all,
not come
Bruce.
out.
You never said it was
Yeah.
invalid.
I didn't say it's invalid.
She
No,
implied that
I
the-
said,
okay,
I
so
said,
what's-
I said it was a 53% vote. I didn't see that as, I see that as a buzzer beater or, you know, a couple points up at the end of the game. I don't see that as a killing. There were plenty of people who voted in support of the budget. 47%. I mean, everyone in the room can do that math, right? I mean, that, it's not like it was, 30% of the folks in town, you know, voted no on the budget. It wasn't anything like that, or the 30% of the folks who came to vote. Everyone who comes to vote, if their vote's legitimate, the election is legitimate. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm just saying, let's keep it in context. I don't feel like we immediately go to saying, frankly, I think it's kind of caving or irresponsible to just say, cut your budget by 10%. I think that sort of shows that you're not intellectually hooked into the budgets the way this board is, I think, because we saw everything that went into it and we asked all the questions we could, as, you know, so that's all I'm saying. Let's budget responsibly. The other big driver in this budget is capital. And as far as I know, another big election where the idea of building a new K-8 consolidated school was voted down. Another legitimate election, you know, the outcome, what came out of that was, folks, we need to fix the schools. And everybody seemed to agree with it. And we've been working really hard to tee that up. So anything we do at this point, I think we have to keep in mind that there's a plan that we can't completely divert from. And that's where a lot of the big money and the big spending is. That some of which is in this budget. I don't know.
we also can't look at ourselves in a vacuum. Some of the other ones that voted down their budgets too, Tolland, Coventry, Killingly, I heard voted theirs down. Yeah.
Coventry always votes their referendum down unless they have, well, unless there's certain particulars in place. But I happen to know this because I've done a little research on it. Coventry is doing things like cutting their lake patrol all summer, which they really don't want to do. It's not all that safe. There are things that they're doing that they find really at odds with what their planning is. And this is of interest to me because we already have great volunteers in the fire departments here. They're also trying to go to a model more like ours because they feel like they're getting unplanned increases by their ambulance service that they pay a fee to. And it's growing and they can't keep it under control. And they're paying in excess of 600 grand for that service. And they're trying to go to a partial volunteer structure, which we already have. And they're saying it's completely derailing their efforts to do that. So, you know, there's fallout.
So back to Peter's letter here. So this was sent out, I believe, 2 weeks ago. I sent it out. And
No, we just.
Did you get it 2 days ago?
Yeah, it was sent on the 15th, or no, that's the other one. It says on
Yesterday.
it, we got it on the.
Eight?
Wednesday, May 15th.
Oh,
So we could,
no, the
Today's the
No,
17th.
15th was
16th.
Phil's letter.
Right.
So he sent this out, it's a framework that another town has followed. We have no framework in place. So if any other members here have a framework that they would like to present that we follow, by all means, present it. But if not, I think that we should at least make a vote on this. And let steps 1 through 5 go through and work with that. So at that point, then I'm ready for a motion. If anybody would like a motion, that we vote on this. So that we can move forward and work on this budget.
I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to vote on anything. We can still work on the budget. We don't have to have a dedicated outline. We know that we need to work on the budget, so we can just work on the budget until Pete talks to the lawyer and decides if this is even something that we can do.
Well, the only thing that's in question is the bottom one, which is the note. And we're not voting on that, we're voting on steps 1 through 5, which.
I'm just saying, I don't think we need to vote on it. We just need to get to work.
And we need a framework to follow though, to be able
We can-
to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, we can still have the framework, but I'm saying we don't need to have a motion and a vote. We can all
So-
agree, this,
But we can have a consensus to adopt the steps in the, or not to adopt, but to work with the steps in this until we see something.
until we
that-
get some clarification.
Yeah,
Cause if we put a motion in and we vote on it, then we're stuck with it.
But the only thing that's in
Regardless.
question as far as the legality goes, the bottom line, which is the note.
Well, I'm not a fan of step 1. I'm not a fan of being, held to that. And then, and also, there is no public hearing part, in this lineup. So when is the public gonna get informed? That is the biggest thing. That is what I think went wrong with this, is that the public did not understand what was at stake with this budget. This was the biggest mill increase we've ever put forward. It deserved a bigger education piece to it. And it didn't happen. It needs to happen now, whatever it is that we do, and I hope everyone's learned that. And that's not even, there's no step 3.5 in here, that's where it needs to go. I don't know.
We could put a step 3.5 in there.
But I don't think we have to vote. I think we just need to figure out like, what's the first step? Like what, we gotta get past step 1.
But we have no framework to follow. This is a framework that another town has used. That has a board of selectmen
Well-
form of government.
The other thing is, every time we follow what Stafford does, we get in trouble. Honestly,
right.
honest to God. We do. That's why we have ARPA, that's why the ARPA commission, which. I don't know. There's other things too that have happened. I guess I don't understand why we have to vote on it, but. Why can't we just start talking about
what we're gonna do.
what is in step 1 here? What are we doing? What's our goal? What mill rate do we want to get to? And how do we think that I mean, the whole thing is what is? We need to balance what we know we need to do as a town to keep the town running the way we think that the people in town expect the town to be run. And at the same time, we have to figure out what people are willing to vote for and support. And the big piece to me in that whole thing is educating people.
I agree. I think there wasn't enough information put out on the second and third order effects of anything less than what we put forward. I think everybody saw the 8.6% and had a bit of sticker shock. Understandably so, it's a huge budget, right? But there's second and third order consequences of not funding what we put forward.
Donna, can you tell me if you applied another 200,000 in fund balance, what impact would that have on the?
Okay, so if you want to do some fast math in your head, you can figure that 1 mil is equal to
480,
425,000.
420.
Yeah, so, okay, it's kind of tricky because now that's just real estate and personal property, and 1 mil of motor vehicle is 57,000. But I have that accounted for because I figured, how much we can get for motor vehicles. Okay, so anyway, 425,000, so that would take it down half mil. So it's currently at 275, so it would take it down to 2.25 for a mil increase. That does not include Phil's 50 grand, so he has 58, 55. So it would be a little less of an increase in the mill.
What's the current mill rate again?
32.16. Oh, and then the one that was proposed is 34.91. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So that's where you get the 2.75.
And that represents 8.6% difference between the two.
I mean, Bruce, what do you think it'll take? Or do you want to get to a 5% increase? Are you thinking a 2 mil increase? Are you thinking a 1 mil increase? What do you think we need to get to?
The increase 4.3%.
The taxing, you're around
The
percent.
expenditure or the mil increase?
If we were to take all three of the general government, K through 8 education, region district 19.
2 acre 19,
Yeah.
Yeah, which did half, but we're still taking that. So. So. With a 4.3% increase, so that means that the Board of Ed. Their increase would be at around 5.1% instead of where it presently is,
And in dollars cut, what is that?
around $250,000.
It would be $258,000 from the Board of Ed budget to bring it down to a 5.1 increase.
Why is the Board of Ed the target?
And how are they gonna cut that? Where are they gonna get that from?
Bill had his original budget, which was around 4.85%, is that correct? So,
Prior to the outplacement.
okay, so you have the outplacements and all that, so then that brought it up to what, about 5.5%?
No, that would, the outplacements, like I was trying to outline, is $1 million.
I believe that the two new outplacements, how much were those?
I don't have it in front of me, but the special ed increase alone is $485,000.
Okay, and that included the transportation too. So there were other things that were in your budget that were added later when Arthur Christensen came in. And there were proposals that he made, which brought your budget way up.
Board added a facilities director.
Yep.
Yep.
The facilities director, and I believe that there was another position to hire at around $56,000, is that correct?
Staff support specialist.
Right, which wasn't in your original budget because you didn't see the need there for it.
But that reduced another line item doing that. Didn't it, not the subs. That's what I thought, that it wasn't just a whole totally new position, that you eliminated another position to make it work, right?
Somebody
Para or
somebody
something.
retire or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kindergarten school teacher.
That's where the 58. That's where the 58 comes from.
Okay.
So, I have to ask you, so, you did not have those things in your budget. And then Arthur Christensen, I believe it was at the fourth workshop, he came in. And he brought those into the picture, I believe with a couple of other expenditures, and they weren't things that you're in your budget. So why were they not in your budget?
Because I have to put something in, and I've said this, I have to put something in front of the board
Mhm.
that they think is gonna be reasonable, that the taxpayers are gonna see is reasonable. The same number of staff support specialists that we had is what's in our budget right now. We had 3, we have 3 in our budget right now. The additional position of the facilities director is a direct relationship to the school project not passing. It's a $17 million tag right now to do roofs, to do 4 or 5 different projects that came out of the facility study.
But a facilities director wasn't really necessary because if you hire your contractor can serve that purpose for you. Without bringing in a new staff member within the town at $80,000 and then adding to that all of the benefits that person's going to get.
What was all in on that 110? 110 total.
I thought, one time when we were listening to the explanation and rationale behind that was that you don't have one contractor working on one thing, you have 3 contractors working on 3 things, and the order in which they need to be done is very dependent in coexistence on each other, so having one person oversee all of them alleviates a lot of problems.
And having one person who is representing the town is better than one person who's representing the contractor.
Where does somebody have to be,
3 different contractors.
but where does somebody have to be hired? If anything, they could be hired for the end, so that they're just coming in consulting on the projects that are being done. Instead of having an employee. And you hire a professional contractor
Well,
to do it.
Have-
3 times.
Bruce, have you looked at the QA&M report that's on the website, the school website yet? I mean, that is the in-depth study everyone's been waiting for to see what the repairs to both schools would be. Some ideas on costs and timing and grouping and all the extras, and it's much deeper detail than I think anyone expected could happen with what you guys got that expertise for. But it's a gross total of 57 million in repairs and renovations. And that is a ton of work that stretches over a period of years. That needs to be managed in timing and facilities and the construction community overall. And I mean, I know you know about this, but you could probably describe it better than I can. It's a load of things. It's not just sort of a couple of jobs that Phil could sort of help do in his free
You're
time.
never gonna see 57
And
million spent on these 2.
I know you're not.
Never,
I know you're
never,
not.
never.
I know you're not,
I'm just
but
saying.
still, I'm
Yep.
just saying. It's not, I'm just saying it's a big amount of work. It's for what we even have in the CIP for starters is a big amount of work. We discussed all this in the budget season. I thought-
I run relatively large facilities too and deal
I
with
know you
budgets
do.
on them, and there's endless needs, there always are, I could write a budget that is
a mile long on things I'd like to do and things that have to be done at the end of the year. At the end of the day, though, you know, there's things I have to present to our corporate entity that I know I can get done, and, you know, we'll do a capital plan the year before. It'll show up, things get carved out of it as needs change and everything. It's not a hard and fast document. You're gonna get that and bank on it. You know, we have facilities that have, need, $10 million worth of roofing. We have other ones that need entire new HVAC systems. You know, production lines go in that are millions of dollars and so forth. It just, but that's depends what the business needs in order to do it. They're different than a public entity, but in many ways, but you don't always get what you want. It's not like if somebody puts this list in front of you of things you should think you need that says $50 million, 57 million.
I know, but so just think if you also had to run a school district while you're doing that.
And
What
you
you
gotta
do.
keep people healthy, safe,
That's what we're
and
looking at.
so forth, and, everything, you don't make an 80-year-old building new either, it's.
I don't even wanna,
Looking at this.
I'm just saying that, I'm just saying we have a big job.
Trying to make it, they're trying to get it to where it's supposed to be, and where it's supposed to have been all along. But because everybody always wants to cut everything and not spend anything and not give money and constantly take away from stuff that really needs to happen, we're in this position now.
But you get everything you want in your life,
It's not about want, it's not a want, it's a need. They need HVAC, they need sprinkler systems, they need electrical work.
Actually talked to some people in town, because I actually have. I didn't need to look on Facebook. I talked to some of my neighbors, and some of my neighbors can barely put food on the table. Okay, so to say that social media is the only way that people talk to people, I've talked to young people, I've talked to old people, I've talked to people on the left, on the right. We are in trouble, like a lot of other towns. A lot of towns. I was talking to somebody who works in the Rhode Island school system. They have 133 placements. Now, yes, outplacements. But this problem isn't going away. And right now, we have to figure out what our townspeople want to do. And we can only fix the money that we get into town. And there are people that may end up getting foreclosed on because they can't afford to pay the taxes because their taxes went up. Because and people say, oh, well, elderly people get a stipend, they got this increase and they got that increase. But they were way below the poverty line to begin with, a lot of these people. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair, and if people are, I don't know what anybody was saying about the texting or whatever, and people were telling people how to vote. You know what I said? My boyfriend asked me, because he asked me questions about the outplacement, and he said, how should I vote? I said, you need to vote with your conscience and what you feel is best. What I think doesn't really matter. And honestly, the infighting of people, this is why I think half the time people don't want to be engaged. And now we're here, and I'm gonna do my best, but there's certain things that, yes, we can't cut. But there is always wiggle room in anybody's budget, because guess what? My budget, I work 2 jobs, and I'm gonna have to figure out regardless how I'm gonna come up with this money, because I know we're gonna have to pay more. I get that. But expecting people to pay as much as they're asking people to pay, this is why it got voted down. And it doesn't matter who told them to vote, how they voted with their conscience. And I'm sorry, I'm just speaking up about this. And, I don't know if necessarily it's, we need to cut this percentage or that percentage. But there's always money to be found, and everybody is gonna have to make sacrifices. If the townspeople are, so does everybody else, because there is no
I think
money.
that's what we're doing, though.
I
I understand that,
understand.
but we're talking about bringing it down.
Yeah,
Talking about how to bring it down.
and I get that, but
It may
but
not, it
everybody's-
may still not appease people who wanna see flat increases year over year, which the town has been offering year over year for a lot of years.
But my thing is, I think people are, what my perspective is that the Board of Ed has done everything and they have cut everything they possibly can, and they shouldn't get any cuts or very minimal cuts.
Well, they have been ponying up, they're more
And
proactive.
And I saw that, and I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't. I'm just kind of
maybe I'm playing devil's advocate, I don't know, but everybody that came to us, we listened to why they needed it, what they needed. And at this point, there are some needs that might have to be put to the side, but we don't wanna keep pushing everything down the road. And that's why we do need to have an increase, and I get that. And I just think what we're asking the people in town to do. With the amount of poverty level we do have, I think they are saying, we can't afford this. And we have to make that choice and say, okay, we're gonna all have to say, okay, this has to be decreased. That's all I'm saying. I just don't, it just felt to me that all we're saying is that every other budget should be cut, everybody else's budget should be cut, but the Board of Ed, we can't cut it. And I'm not saying that they can or can't, and they haven't been diligently doing it. I'm just saying from a perspective where a lot of people don't have children in this town. They're like, okay, it's constant, and whether it was 1% this year or 8% last year or 4.5%, they're looking at their pocketbooks right now. They're looking at what they can do or what they can't do right now. And I know every town is facing this, and yes, we shouldn't go what Stafford does or what Tom does. You know,
What I'm saying is in this figuring out
Yes.
responsible cutting, responsible budgeting, which at least is what drives me to spend the time on Board of Finance that I
Mhm.
spend. It would be to protect some of the long-term goals that this town's trying to achieve, and I'm
Yeah.
going by what I'm hearing are the sort of sweeping things that we want to do or that we need to do, and the schools are a pretty big one. And I'm just saying, getting there, this is not gonna help us get there. This is, in fact, is gonna be the absolute wrong move to nickel and dime the idea of a good facilities manager, I think. And I think too, a good facilities manager is gonna find economies of scale in as much work as we have to do. I think they're gonna be paying for themselves and then some. That's my feeling.
I don't think we should tell Phil whether he can have a facilities director or not. I
Yeah.
think we come up with some
Right.
sort of a number that, you know, we think would be palatable to the voters, that'll get this next budget voted in and go from there. The question is, what is that percent?
It's back to your
Yeah,
question you asked about an hour
I think
ago, I
that's-
think.
I think that's our task here, like, what do we think?
What's the number?
I'm not gonna tell him he should have a facilities director or not.
So at the referendum, Board of Selectmen's budget was 4.4% increase. They're working to try to get that down as much as they can, even as low as 2.5% if they can. So the Board of Education, you know, is the only other one that needs to make concessions because your budget was voted down. You know, it's not that we're beating up on you and the Board of Education or anything, but there have to be significant reductions in your budget. You know, however you find them, because I have to say to your credit, you know, through attrition, you're not replacing that kindergarten school teacher, but as I brought up in our hearings and whatnot, that your schools, each school has lost 21 students in the past 4 years, 21 at Hall, 21 at Center, and before this, there's been no release of staff through attrition whatsoever. So I think if you were to start looking at that, is maybe getting rid of a couple of, I hate to put it that way, but when those positions come up, you know, through attrition, to let those go vacant, and maybe condense some more students into the classrooms, and if need be, if you're getting rid of teachers, then you bring paraprofessionals in to take the place if you need additional staffing in there. But I would really like to see the Board of Education coming down to around 5%. There are other people in town that would like to see it a lot less. So,
Can I just say, not one person has said a word of that? Not one,
to you personally,
not anybody. Not one person at our meeting. There was one person that spoke out in support of the budget. There's not been one email, not one conversation, so for us to say people want, I'd love to hear what they want.
people voted the budget down. That's the fact of the matter.
Correct,
Your
by
budget.
42 votes.
It doesn't matter how many votes it was. The
It
fact
does
of the
matter.
matter is, the budget was voted down. So when
You're asking to cut one budget, the other budget is the selectmen's budget,
they're
which everything
working, they're
else.
working on cutting that.
Okay, so the Board of Education already gave you $58,000, but I haven't even presented that to you.
You sent your letter, you
Okay.
told us about that,
But you're asking for another 250,000, Bruce.
yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, are you going to let this go back to referendum and all you've cut from it is
That's
$58,000?
not my job. You're talking about the Board of Education budget. The Board of Education, the 7 members who are elected just as you are,
Mhm.
voted to cut. They reduced their budget by $58,000. That's what they sent back to the Board of Finance.
Well, it's likely that the Board of Education will have to get together again, and they're gonna have to come up with some concessions. It's not that you're getting cuts, you're just being asked for a reduction in the increase that you're getting over last year. and
That is a
that's
cut. Off the
No, it's a
request.
reduction.
It's a decrease. Are you talking
This
to?
is- could I just ask a question here? Because we're kind of like focusing on, I think it is a mistake to focus on one area as the only area that's on the table here.
Oh, we're not
I mean,
focusing on one area.
Wait, you are right now,
Well, the Board of Selectmen has been brought up as well.
but I haven't heard anything about what there's, that's what I was gonna ask. Could we hear what the plans are on the Board of Selectmen budgets and the other town budgets?
There's only 2 budgets, there's Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, those are the only 2 budgets.
Right,
So. I don't know what I have to cut, I was planning on waiting till you told me how much to cut and then figuring out what budgets what line items within that budget I need to cut. I'm working from you, I can,
Back
that's,
to Christina's question, what's the figure?
what, you want me to give you a number, I did take off $100,000, I'll find out where it's coming from. I gotta talk to the other selectmen, though, I'm not gonna make that decision on my own, sitting here.
No, we're asking, the question came up to you because it was said that you're already working on it.
I'm,
No, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot and I'm not calling you out. That's just why the question came to you, like it did right now.
sure,
So we're
that's
just
fine.
curious as to like some of your ideas.
So, some of my ideas are, looking at the CIP, it was supposed to be a $1 million shock absorber. It's now a $1.5 million shock absorber.
It's not a shock absorber anymore though.
But
It is to pay for the
The-
projects in this year.
that's right, projects, and we don't know what those projects are.
It's
Those
the
are
roof and the HVAC.
what, correct, but where did the 2.5 million come from? Is there bids that say 2.5? Also, out of that 2.5, the board
There's a
said.
QA&M report that outlines everything that they're trying to do right now,
No, I believe you.
which is well over $57 million. So
Right,
and
and
we have
million and a
tight
half
deadlines for the
it's a
HVAC.
drop in the bucket, not even.
Right, it's
compared
a
to
million
what
and a
needs
half.
to be spent.
it's $1.5 million that needs to be spent for education. It's in my budget. All right? We can add the $1.5 million to their budget and see how it passes. My budget will pass fine, $1.5 million.
Next year for the budget hearings, I mean, we're gonna have to get into bonding. Because if we don't bond, what's gonna end up happening, every single year, we're going to be coming and we're going to be telling people,
That's
this
the
is what your
plan.
tax increases are. So we need to get to bonding. This year it can't happen, but it will happen next year.
Well,
And
this
bonding
year,
laws are changing even as we speak at the legislature.
in this next year that we're talking about funding, is the year where we have to figure out what that bond plan is. The first step is to tackle the big projects, the roof, they're sort of standalone, and there's deadlines for those. So we have to do those now. In the meantime, we need to figure out what else are we gonna do and how much money do we need to do it? And that needs to happen in this 12 months. So that next year, so when we're here a year from now, we know how much we need to bond and we know what that bond payment's gonna be. And that's a lot to do in a year. I think just because everything takes so long, but that's what the plan is. That's what's in the CIP.
So back to the point that the people voted these budgets down, and there need to be cuts to be able to get the voters to accept those cuts.
Cuts in
They won't-
education,
they'll
they're
pass,
missing the education part.
No, I'm not missing the education
If
part.
people understand what's at stake, maybe they would vote
See,
differently.
here we go. People don't understand.
They
The fact
don't.
of the matter is voters.
You
went out-
understand, you don't
Voters went out and
understand.
voted. I understand.
I don't think you do.
You know what?
I don't think so. Based on some of these comments, I don't think people understand all these moving parts and what these
Can
things.
I just say one thing? Okay, so we're here to work together. We work for the people of the town. So to say that everybody is ignorant and doesn't know what's going on.
Not ignorant.
Is unfair.
Uninformed is
Uninformed,
different than
ignorant.
ignorant. I'm not saying,
Okay.
no, they're uninformed.
Okay.
Did you mail them something? Did you explain this to them? No, you didn't.
They're responsible for paying attention what's going on in town
Oh,
No,
and the
okay.
state and the federal government.
84% of this town chose not to even get involved. They did not.
Yeah, that's true. That's-
84%.
But those who got involved voted the two budgets down,
Mhm.
and that's what
And
we
they-
have to deal with. Because we can keep talking about this, without a framework that allows us to do it. It's not gonna happen. We're just gonna sit here and keep on talking about it, and there's not gonna be any progress whatsoever. With this framework, we can at least tell the Board of Selectmen, we can tell the Board of Education what their cuts need to be. We don't cut for them. They decide what the cuts are going to be for their own departments.
okay.
So either we
Well-
move forward, we go through this for like another hour, we end the meeting, and then we're back next week. Or the week after, and we're gonna keep doing this over and over and over, unless we have a framework to start with tonight, so that we can move forward.
Okay, just doing the fund balance, that gets us from 8.6 to 6.9, well, actually 7, let's say 7. So it's already going in the right direction, and that's that. If there's
So what's that bring us to?
6.9, it's 7%. Yeah, just make it 7.
8.6 to 7.
Mhm.
And that's with how much?
That's the tax increase part, and that's the increase in the mill rate. It would be 2.25 mil.
How much was that?
That's a half a point off.
No, added, like what we were already gonna apply from the fund balance, how much more?
Oh, it's
200,000, so it puts us at 900,000. We already agreed to 700,000 in the previous.
Yeah.
But that was before we had the financials that supported a greater fund balance, dimension there. So.
Donna, what's the mill rate look like with a 5% increase?
With a 5% increase in spending. Total spending, the three budgets added together. The mill rate would be 33.89.
So that would be taking off another 0.5 of a mil, right?
And let me just tell you that it's gonna take out about $200,000 because
Because that's a 1.7, almost a 1.75, it's a 1.73 mil difference that if you got it down to 5%, that's right.
so let's do the math together, because that would take 108,000 off of the Board of Ed budget. And off of the town budget, it would take off 125,000.
I'm not saying where that should come from.
Oh,
I'm
you're
just
not saying
saying,
which budget?
no,
Okay.
How
Okay,
much
then.
off the town, how much would you say off the town? I know you're splitting them out.
Yeah, so, but, oh, I said I had 125,000
Yeah,
coming off the town. And 108,000 coming off the Board of Ed.
so you just add the two together and that'd be the total number, no matter whether it comes
Yes,
from one or
that'd be
the
the
other.
total, no matter where it comes from.
And then, and 100, okay.
I bet that would pass.
Does that take into account the 58,000 that you already, is that another?
That's part of that 108, that's why it's 108.
Yeah, it's part of the 58.
So if we were if we were,
And that would bring the mill rate around 33.89
Yes,
versus the 34.91.
yes.
That brings it down now.
Yeah,
But you think 1.75 is,
I think it's artificially low
is,
myself.
is sellable?
I think
Yeah,
that
it's
was
only-
sellable.
I think it would be too.
You do?
I do.
Exactly how many services are we
Look
gonna?
at, look at him, he's.
I would fight against that.
Yeah.
Can I speak just, and it's not very appropriate, so.
Oh, you're gonna fight against it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
I think you're not cutting it fairly, but. By what you're saying. 57% of the budget comes from the Board of Education. With that increase, if you cut it 50%, that's them cutting $206,995. 24% of the increase comes from the Board of Selectmen. And if they cut 50%, that they would be cutting $72,190. For me, so I'd be on board with something like that. That's my 2 cents. And that's increasing the budget too.
Are you taking comments from the floor now?
Well, we have been, so go ahead.
Okay, then I would like to say that I think that's really the wrong approach, because many of the requirements within the Board of Education are beyond the control of the Board of Education. They're not things that you can easily cut. It's not discretionary spending. It's not like, you know, you're gonna take away everything that is evenly spread. You can't just take a percentage and apply it willy-nilly across the two, because these extra expenses related to special education are mandated by law, and we have to do right by our students. And we can't cut those. That's not debatable. That's not up to the Board of Education to cut those. So what you're leaving is that huge cut of everything else. You're going to have bigger classrooms. You are going to have people every single one of your meetings. It will not pass if you're cutting this out of the Board of Education. And I will fight against this budget if you try and take it all out of the Board of Education.
Peter, from 97 Trask Road. I understand it's a difficult task. And I agree with Ms. Milos that people need to understand what's happening. And we are here tonight. We want to understand that. And I think a good start would be not to say these are cuts. That's completely incorrect. You're struggling with decreasing increases in both budgets. I recognize it's a difficult task, but no one is suggesting that the townspeople, neither those who go to yay or nay, are suggesting that we have a decrease in anyone's budget. Which you sound that way as a group. I don't think you recognize it. You know, you may not like a particular area of the budget that may be impacted, but it's not a cut. None of us have that luxury of saying, how much will we decrease or increase? We're not getting increases at all. So I would ask you to at least present it in the proper context as you're having this discussion. And I think what the first selectman and the chairman of the Board of Finance have outlined in the process is a good one, without demonizing all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't agree that this, when you're talking about the impact of 7 outplacement students, that it's a cut to try to absorb that. That's essentially what we're doing. We're taking a big mandated charge and we're saying, oh, because they have this big mandated charge, which represents a huge amount of their budget increase, we're saying absorb that. Just absorb more of it. I feel like the Board of Ed has already been proactive about what they've absorbed. They've done a whole lot of cutting and now they're down to bone. And I feel like there's not, I don't know if I'm the only one who's like seeing it that way. But I feel like there's no acknowledgement of that. They got hit with something that's a huge outlay that they weren't expecting. We didn't even know about it till we were closing the budget down. We didn't have that much time to deal with it. So to me, that's not the same as containing costs, finding economies of scale elsewhere, doing all the things that I used to do in corporate America and that we do in our household budgets. That's different. To me, that's a deal changer. So I don't think it's similar to regular budget cutting. I'd like to see us not hit them again since they've ponied up aggressively. They have their meetings, they look at things, they decide what to put on the table. Where are we rewarding that? No one else has come to us and offered up.
It's not true.
Well, in the final stages of doing the budget, they did. We had like both firehouses were sitting in the audience and offering cuts when we were doing that. There have been some involved citizens who have done that out of their own areas. I'm just saying this is different. Being hit with what they're hit with this year.
Again, like I said, Phil had submitted his first budget. And then Arthur Christensen came in. He proposed the increases that they went with. They weren't in Phil's budget because Phil didn't see a need for it.
Since I'm here, can I speak now because I'm here?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear you.
So, since you're gonna call me out, I figured I'd be down here so you can call me out right in person. Phil didn't propose something to you and then I came in with all these things that I wanted. What had happened was, at 4:37, the day of that meeting, I learned my mom died, so I couldn't make that meeting. I apologize, but there are other things going on in my life. But the things that got put in the budget that I was spearheading were voted on by the Board of Education. And as a matter of fact, I made concessions for the things that I wanted. Because the $30,000 for special education hours, I wanted a teacher, which would have been significantly more. We gave back the 20 grand in the facilities money because we have the money in CIP, so we could do it there. And you say you know what's in the budget and you still want to cut $250,000. If I took out everything that I wanted, according to you, that would be shy of $140,000. That still leaves over $100,000. That's 2 teachers. And if you want to talk about a lesson in voting with your conscience, I'll give you a challenge. You want that to go through? When those teachers let go because of this, I want each and every one of you to watch them walk out of that building. Say, sorry, just couldn't do it this year. All the parents of those kids, the 21 kids that left each school over the past 5 years, you know how many teachers are in the school? There's 17 in center. There's probably 18 in Hall. That's an average of 1.3 kids that left those rooms. That's not gonna change the amount of teachers that you need. It's not. You're not losing those 21 kids in one grade. You're losing them across 8 grades in 2 schools. 42 kids, 8 grades, 2 schools. It's not enough to cut these teachers. I'm sorry, it's not enough. That doesn't require a teacher cut. You're losing kids in a staggered manner. There's nothing we can do about contractual increases to teacher salaries. There's nothing we can do about the money that has to be paid for these kids who need the outplacement education. Nothing. And like I said, even if you slash everything out of there, we're still over $100,000 short. Where are we gonna find that? You find it in jobs. I'm not willing to cut jobs. I'm not, because if any of you, and the audience included, bothered to be on the Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, you would have heard that we're losing a kindergarten teacher, or excuse me, we're losing a fourth grade teacher. We don't need a kindergarten teacher, and our teachers will be shuffled around to make up that difference. We don't hire and fire. We don't do things like that. It happened this past year with a teacher who taught third grade, had to get bumped down to first grade because of how the classes were set up. The teachers in this district are very versatile, and I'm not willing to cut them, any of them, because for an arbitrary decrease. I'm not. And that's the end. So again, call me out, that's fine. I stand by every single thing I voted to put into that budget. And I know the other members of the board do too, because they all voted for it.
Well, you did acknowledge that cuts could be made, but you just don't wanna make them.
No, I think he acknowledged that cuts could be made at the sacrifice of teachers and potentially programs.
You know what, you don't have to necessarily look at it as you're cutting them, you're offering them new opportunities.
Oh,
No, you
wow.
are. I'll tell you what,
Oh.
in any
Yeah, Rich,
business,
that's rich.
well, you know what, it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
In any business, you have reductions in staff, whether it's firings or layoffs. There's no reason that teaching can't be in that same category.
Except we are providing a public service. That is part of what we're doing as a town. We're not talking about profit margins here. We're talking about actual kids getting an education. That's the bottom line. And we have an obligation to provide that, but and I think our town values it beyond just providing the bare minimum. I think we're striving to do a little bit better than that. And that's what's at stake. That is what is at stake.
I like my approach without getting nasty, you know, we get down the middle. And whether it comes out of Board of Selectmen or a little bit more out of Board of Ed. I think we got something little across the finish line. I'm suggesting getting rid of a single teacher, already getting rid of one that's gonna retire. You know, up to you guys, what you wanna do with your new positions that haven't been filled yet. I could weigh in on that at all, but it's, I don't think there's $250,000 to be had out of the Board of Ed budget. You know, not with the mandated, you know, increases with the special ed services and so forth. You know, my kids went through those schools too, and I don't want to, you know, see kids hurt, and any of that. I do think we need to put something up though for the voters, you know, so we can get this done the next time, and I think we need to thoughtfully do it, and it's
A mill reduction sounds good to me. To me, it seems like something that could be sold. But I think it matters what
it comes out, you know, like,
who is going to explain that to people and support that when asked about it. And if there's people who are in the position to be doing that and are actually telling people to vote no to it, in the end, then we're gonna be right back here.
yeah.
Right. Like, I just wanna outline that the Board of Ed, you know, across the board, voted unanimously, vote on their budget submission recently to cut this 58,000, but on their budget commission to the budget submission to this board, it was a unanimous vote. This board voted to, the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously on their budget when they moved it ahead. This board voted 4-0 to send the budgets to the town. That was and then 2 abstentions, but no negative votes, no votes. That was made up of 2 registered Republicans, 1 unaffiliated, and 1 registered Democrat. Those 4 votes that passed this budget. That's about as nonpartisan as you're gonna get. This isn't about that argument. I think people on this board are pretty fiscally responsible and always have been. I think it's a question of what are your goals for the town and what are we able to handle and how are we able to keep up with the courses we've set? And one of them is, I don't think we can sit out seeing some improvement on our goal to fix the schools. I just don't. I don't think we can take a buy on that. So the fact that we get kind of hit with something unforeseen, like the special ed situation, I think we have to deal with that. And what I think we need to do going out of this is figure out a way that we can, as an energy force of the town of Wellington, lobby the state for correcting this shift somewhat. Phil suggested some things to us when you brought it to the table. And I think we have to work on that in the off budget.
Special ed you're referring to, right?
Well, special ed is one of them, because they're passing it on to other towns. I mean, there's gotta be something that CROG and some other groups are doing. I've already talked to some people that I know there about this. This isn't like us alone who are dealing with this issue, this huge cost. For a town our size, it's crazy. So, but one of the things I want to ask is there something we can do to relieve that pressure? On any additional pressure beyond the 58,000? Christine, is there anything in CIP, do you think?
I mean, in.
I saw something.
That wouldn't put us going backwards on something.
I was looking at that. And the precedent was kind of set with the school building committee to start off with $100,000. I think we could take. It's still important and I want it to go forward because it's something that needs to happen, but the emergency services building committee started off with 200,000. I feel like we could bring that back to 100,000. They would still have money, could start getting going on stuff, but not, and then next year, if they need more money, we can move forward with that. That's what happened with the school building committee. It was September of 21, they got $100,000. And then in November of 22, they got another 100,000. And then at the end of that, they gave back $58,000. So you're not gonna need the whole
Can I
200,000.
speak to that for just a minute? The reason there's 200,000 instead of 100 and 100 like the school building committee is unfortunately, the facilities committee is gonna have to move forward with some actual projects this year to get people inside. People living in the parking lot isn't cutting it. With the school building committee, they had a school to be in while they were looking at the school building committee. This is actually gonna take some building out. So that's why that money is there. It's not just because they're just not just planning with it. That 200,000, the reason it started at 200,000 was that was money already appropriated for another program that was moved over, and it said it would be spent in a way that it was coordinating with the other department instead of alone. So it was 200,000 that was already being spent to get people inside. It'd be like if you were holding classes in the parking lot while you looked at a new school building committee. You gotta put the children inside. I've gotta put my firefighters inside.
I get that, and
And that's why I'm looking more at that 1.5, and I know that we have a roof project, I know we have an HVAC project, I know all that's coming. I haven't seen a plan yet. I have not seen a plan, and I believe that there was like solar or something that was questionable built into that plan already. And that money's already being spent down for other projects, so it couldn't all have been planned for the roof and HVAC.
I gotta take it out, either that or I gotta decide whether poor people aren't getting food, whether taxes aren't getting collected, I gotta cut something from the operating budget of the town. That's what I'm saying. And when it comes to, education on how, I think it's probably up to this board and the Board of Education to educate people on the education budget, and this board and the Board of Selectmen to educate people on the town budget. And you can lead a horse to water. I think that we have made every one of these meetings public. We put them online. We are doing way more to put this information out now than we were 5 years ago before Zoom. I didn't even learn how to use Zoom until 5 years ago. So the fact that you think that people don't know what's going on, you can't force feed information to people and make them.
No,
talk
but I
what you
think
want.
what Christina had proposed at the town meeting, the budget, you know, the town meeting, the budget hearing and the town meeting.
Right.
She proposed a consortium, you know, she proposed the first selectman, the Board of Finance chair and the Board of Ed chair or
Yes, and we
superintendent
looked into that.
to write you know, a letter. I think it should go every door direct. You know what I mean? It's
Yes,
like, that would work, because here's the thing, Pete, it's not reasonable to expect people to come to a 2.5 hour meeting, 3 hour meeting, and then also try to go, what are they gonna do next, and what's out of that? There's no message out of that. The
Right.
minutes don't cover it.
Right,
It
and
doesn't cover it. So there's gotta be a more muscly
we discussed that.
conversation, yeah.
We brought it up at the Board of Selectmen about writing that letter, and it was brought up by the former first selectman that we were entering the blackout period where we weren't allowed to discuss the budget. And we would have had to get a letter approved by a lawyer and have it go through this and that, and that's why we didn't do it.
Right, but that was in the end game. I'm saying for this next time out, there's gotta be a message.
And
There's
I
gotta be
think that we're
something
already
more
in that
than,
period
than-
now for this referendum.
than just letting it sort of be discussed on Facebook. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And from the voices that are making the decisions.
Bill, if you could just wait a second, somebody's been on the screen for like 20 minutes. Samsung SMS1.
Sam, you wanna
Sam?
speak?
Samsung.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Linda Minor, Navajo Road. And I'd like to address some of the CIP stuff. I think the first selectman's right on that should be reduced back down to where it was. I mean, definitely we need that roof replaced. We've been fighting for that. And the HVAC, I guess we waited on the roof so that could get the grant money in for that. I was a little mixed feelings on the solar, but looking through some of that, what did Suzanne say? It was like 53 million or something. That's major renovations. That's just not repairs that we need. I mean, some of the stuff there. Do you have a comment? I see a lot of chuckling.
Oh, no, she was just laughing because you misidentified her. It's Stephanie.
It's Stephanie.
Oh, Stephanie. Okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
But something like the parking lot, they're not looking to just repair that parking lot. They want to expand it. And again, we're having a declining number of students. They could chip and seal that just like we chip and seal our roads. I went and I looked at the parking lot. It looked in better shape than my road did before they chipped and sealed it. And maybe there's a couple of like 2 6 by 12 inch spots they need to patch. So they're really looking to do major renovations and not just the repairs that need to get done. So that's one number that could come down. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Can I just, Walter, for clarity, you had a number and I just want to make sure, I think what's important is how you broke out the Board of Ed side and what the selectmen side was. You guys, you're right, you don't get to decide what is cut. I think Peter's
Nor
voice
should
was.
we.
What's that?
Or should we?
So I think Peter's voice was that he would be cutting the CIP side on the 1.5 million. That would be a selectman decision. the question to you is, so I think your total that you were talking about was $433,555, if I had that right. And 200,000 was the additional funds, so you're down to 233,55. Donna, the number that she threw out, and I just wanna find out if this is what you were thinking. Pulled off of the Board of Ed side, the 58,555 already.
Yeah.
Added another 50,000 on
She
top.
had 108 is the number.
That 108 would be the total, correct? And then the balance was gonna go onto the selectmen side.
125 for a total of
And-
133 to get a 1 mil decrease.
So that, I wanted to make sure I understood that, and that's what the discussion is about, so we understood, because that's. As those one budget goes, they need to know what they would.
And
have
that
to
was
buy.
my line of thinking, you know.
And that would get to, a 33.89 mill rate.
3389 down from
Okay. Thank you.
3491.
Thank you for that clarity.
All right, thanks for the question.
Yeah, one in a fraction.
Did you say 3389?
Correct. So I'm looking at Donna's cheat sheet, so.
Yeah. That's where we were, when you were talking about.
Correct.
Being.
I just wanted to make sure because the total of the 233, it matters. Because you could say $1 to the selectmen and the rest is gonna go to Board of Ed. That's why I'm asking to make sure there's clarity on what you're considering as 108 is on the Board of Ed side. Granted, the whole thing hits the Board of Ed because the selectmen side could take off it on CIP, but that's their choice, right? It's
What is the number you're talking about on the CIP from the selectmen? Because
So.
that would still have to
The
be
number
something
you were
that
gonna
CIP.
subtract from my budget,
125, I was.
yes,
Just
probably
to-
about 125, which would bring it down from 2.5 to $2.35 million. And I can either cut from the CIP budget there, or I can cut operational budget. I really don't have a whole lot of other choices.
Well,
like
what about
Phil,
the-
I'd have to start firing people.
When you're saying operational though, I mean, what about the transfer outs?
So you mean like fire departments or transfer outs? I consider, you know, basic public safety and operational cost, even though it's called transfer out.
No, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just saying, where does that fit into this? Does that fit into something you're looking at, some of the transfer out budgets, or are you just looking at the stuff that's on?
I'm looking at my total budget and the transfer outs are all operational costs. I don't transfer out just to, you know. I've got the same problems Phil does. I've got problems with contractual obligations. And I still have to operate my.
No, I understand,
government, and I'd really rather not cut operations for savings. When it
Yeah,
comes down to the two, I gotta pick one.
I'm not suggesting you should, I think I'm not, Mike, can you know what we're talking about, maybe?
Maybe.
Do you have a comment?
Mike McCoo, Clover Springs, I feel like I may be a little confused, but I feel like we're mixing different budget responsibilities here. I'm not sure exactly, when Pete referred to some of these things generically, I'm not sure if he's referring to just the selectmen's budget or the general government budget.
That's what I'm
General government
asking.
budget.
Okay, but that's not your budget.
Whose budget is it?
It's the Board of Finance.
Well, that's right.
Right, so I'm just trying to understand, when you're saying I have to look at cutting something in general government, no,
Right.
you don't have to look at cutting.
No.
something.
They
do.
The way this, because the referendum failed, they give me a bottom line for general government. I figure out how to make the general government budget work. It's now, I now look at the line items. That's the way that it, you know, the
See,
town.
now I Okay, now I understand that, okay, because previous to that process,
And
then the
previous,
general government goes the general government would go directly from the requesting agencies to the Board of Finance. But in this case, now there's this other layer.
Right, there's
Now I
another
get it.
layer,
Okay.
and personally, this is a belief layer, is that when we presented the general government budget to the Board of Finance, you guys really went through it line by line and cut what you thought down to where you thought it should be. I'm now living with less budget than I asked for, and if you cut it beyond that, then I'm really hurting, much like the Board of Ed is. I think I have many of the same arguments the Board of Ed has, except that I don't have small children to put in front of you. I just have poor people and old people and bad roads.
Oh, come on.
So,
And, you know, and we went through your budget and
you did extensively.
significantly,
Yes.
yeah, significantly. I know what you're saying, and it's like when we were talking about Coventry's budget, they're taking down more of their tree budget to be, you know. so-
And that's another one of my concerns is you
I
took
know.
out my free budget. And I've been getting multiple messages from Demas over the last 4 weeks saying this is gonna be a particularly bad hurricane season. You really ought to increase your tree budget or you're not gonna have power for weeks.
Got it.
And I've already lost my tree budget. I've lost my pavement budget. There's a couple roads we can't do it the way we want to because the asphalt budget is there.
Mike?
Just thinking over some of these challenges over the last few years. I think cycling through these similar conversations, it often comes back to what Jason is talking about, and that is the least amount of pain in operating the town comes from pulling back on capital. But then we also end up in these situations that we've been in these last couple of years, talking about major capital things. And we're saying, I can't believe all the people who were in charge for the last 10 or 20 years kept kicking the can down the road, and now we're stuck with a bigger problem. So the easy solution tonight, with causing the least amount of pain, is start taking some stuff out of capital, like one of the suggestions that Jason made. Maybe it's not a bad idea, but then we look at what is the effect next year on doing that.
I think Jason was thinking more like, you know, the SBC model. If it were, you know, for convening the firehouse building committee. You know, something like 100,000 now.
Yeah, I get that.
And then
My point is-
100,000 later.
My
you
point
know,
is that
yeah.
that's in the capital budget, so it is
Mhm.
less impactful on current services to tap into that for some of the balance you're looking for.
Right,
And I
Then you
agree
have to
that
come
may
back
be,
and
that may be the
replenish,
tool
yeah.
that you all have to figure out how to use,
Mhm.
or that may be part of getting your mill, you know, like, that's 20% of. That 100,000 you're talking about is 20% of the mill you're looking for, right? A mill's for.
420.
Okay, so it's over 20%. It's almost 25% of the mill you need. So maybe it's gotta be a combination of some capital and some operating and.
Well, I was looking at capital with different spots because we have an emergent problem down there at Third.
I agree. I'm on that committee. I'm just saying, or. Maybe my taxes won't go up this year.
Jim Marshall?
Hi, guys. Jim Marshall, Fisher Hill Road again. I just want to kind of weigh in a little bit further on the capital improvement discussion that's been ongoing. And I tend to agree with Jason and Mike's, I guess, methodology or thought process related to potential reductions to capital improvement. There's nothing saying that as the need at the stations evolves over the work of the committee over the next year, that they can't come before Board of Finance for funding for the request to advance their effort. But critical to all of this discussion, as Mike also noted, is the desire to start moving the needle on some of these things will take committed effort to actually commit to funding and to commit to a plan to generate funding to pay for this stuff. You want a fire station that's $12 million? That's a $3 million increase. If we don't, it's going to hit somebody in one shot unless we plan for it. And that's increasing your capital reserve, not cutting it. There may be different discussions. There's a lengthy conversation that all of these boards need to have about how best to strategize and schedule that as a gradual process that is significantly more impactful than what's been done to date. Cutting funding to capital is literally the worst thing we can do to get ahead of future financial hardship. We need to plan appropriately, and it's going to hurt, but that's where this is at a little bit. I'm not saying it's something I'm enjoying. It's not a position I think anybody wants to be in, but cutting capital is quite possibly the worst thing that we could do. And maybe to the point, this seems to be a hardship for everybody. Maybe 5% is too low a stretch here. Maybe it's a 6% increase you guys are really trying to reach. Because it sounds like from what everybody at the table is saying, 5% seems to be a little bit too far to balance the needs of what the town is looking for and the realities of the situation. So, thank you.
Donna, what would the number be on 6%?
6.1% is the budget that failed. That was the increase in expenditures, 6.1%.
Okay, but tax increase.
Tax, yeah,
That's what I mean, tax impact, instead of down from 8.6. That's what I'm talking about, sorry, I was just talking about which.
So I'm talking mill rate, so it was 34.91, and that was the 8.6% increase. Now you want to know, okay, good question, I can't do it in my head,
Okay,
and
you wanna tell me?
yeah, so if the mill rate is 33.89, you want to know, what is that in an increase? So it is current 32.16, and it's gonna go to 33.89, so find the difference.
Yeah, no, we've already figured that
We
though.
figured that out.
That's
1.3.
5.4, right? Increase. That's the one that we were just,
In the mill rate,
well. Tax increase,
Sure, she.
yeah, in the mill rate, but wouldn't that be the same on the tax increase? What would if we're talking about, that if 5% increase in
spending,
is palatable, what would that dollar figure be for 6%? So.
That's what failed. 6.1% failed.
Yeah, but Phil, you and
But
Donna
that-
are going back to the
Yeah,
expenditure budget.
I
She's
think,
talking
I'm
about
sorry, I'm
taxation.
talking about what the taxpayer is gonna look at is not the mill number itself. They're gonna look at the 8.6%. That's why this budget failed. So if we took that 8.6 down, what would 6% look like? Is what I'm trying to get at.
okay.
Christina, do
So
you?
we put another.
I'll do the
100.
math.
Yeah. Put it in the spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Would it roughly be another 100,000 back into expense budget? I'm trying to get that number in my head.
Yeah, something like that,
Roughly, yeah.
yeah. So instead of the total that you had was
125 off the town and 108 off Board of Finance, Board of Ed, but we. Yeah.
right. What was it? 233.
Mhm.
That's what would achieve the 5%?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so, sure. Get that done.
It moves 6.1.
Yes,
It's reading at the bottom.
yes.
The range is 5%. 10% between expenditures. There.
Yes.
16.
Yes. 5.5, 7 expenditures. They want to know the mill rate. The increase in
That
the
mill
mill
rate would have been
the percent.
30,
is the mill rate.
3, 4. When was that? Yeah, we work in that rates, but I'm trying to convert it. Yeah, I would have a budget like yours. Yeah. Yeah. It is, if I took that down.
Increase in the mill rate. So it's 8.6, 5.3.
Did you hear that stuff?
What's that?
Go ahead.
No.
So it would go from 8.6% increase in the mill rate, when the mill rate was 34.91. Now the mill rate would go down to 33.89, and that would be a 5.4% increase. In the mill rate.
Right. And then, so then what would the increase be if the increase was 6, what would the mill rate be?
6% increase in the mill rate. Do you want to know what that is? What would that mill rate increase be if it was?
Well, I'm looking at, that's representing the percentage tax increase, isn't it? When we
Well,
say, that's what it will show, right?
The voters are voting on the expenditure increase, on the expenditure budgets. So they would be voting on the 5% increase in expenditures. Then we take off what we apply from fund balance and our state revenue and our local revenue, and then the balance we get from the taxpayer. And that's the mill rate. So I think they're looking. They could look at it that way. They could look at it that the mill rate is increasing 8.6%.
To get to a mill rate increase of 6%, it would go to 34.15.
34.15, very good, thank you.
Now, you gotta make something that's like good, yeah, you gotta get it like, is that.
Yeah. Well, if it was 33.9, let's try that. 33.99 is 5.6%.
Yeah.
I still think with the millions of dollars we're talking about here, coming up with 233 grand, it's doable. I do.
Yes.
So to consider, if you did make these adjustments or whatnot, the Board of Education budget was still voted down.
And so is the general government.
That's why, we are talking about the Board of Education budget too here, it's not just, the general government.
But do you feel that enough concessions were made?
They do
Well,
have
to satisfy voters.
I think it probably will be, that's my opinion, that's one man's opinion here, I'm not talking to this whole board, I do think that. We don't want to train wreck education either, they got that giant increase coming. You start like laying off teachers or whatever, that's gonna be looked at pretty unfavorably here, especially with the younger people with kids in the school system and everything, I just. It did get voted down, something has to be done, but it.
I just don't see where there's the fat to trim in that one.
I think, gotta look a little bit, you know, they got 58, you know, they've done
Yeah.
that. I truly think there's probably find a little more.
Maybe, I'm just saying
Should make
it's
it
not like a.
10, Should make it
Yeah,
10.
I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing, I'm just saying, I personally, again, one minute opinion. I personally don't see where you could get that. from.
Well, and that's fair, that's your opinion.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
I make a point about the Board of Education budget being voted down. You had a voter who, I don't know how she voted, but she was on here speaking and saying that the Board of Education was looking to expand the park. Okay? That's not in the budget. That's not in this budget. That has nothing to do with this budget. That is a line item on a long sheet of paper we got from a facility study that was done. That is way down the road. And to think that, well, we could just cut that and that would bring down their budget. It's not in there. So when you say people know what was in the budget, I point and say, I'm not so sure about that.
All right, it's not a perfect world,
I'm not saying that, but what
but we're a country where
But if you-
everybody has to say.
no, that's not my point. My point is, if you're gonna continually bring up the fact that it was voted down. You need to consider why it was voted down and the accuracy with which the people used the information they had to vote it down. If that's what I'm saying, and that's a prime example. That's all. There's all of our budget meetings online, viewable. And again, I called out on Tuesday, where was everybody with their suggestions? Nobody was there.
It was still voted down.
I'm not saying it wasn't, but again, saying it 50 times, Bruce,
Okay.
doesn't change the point of it.
It was voted down. Peter,
Peter Richard, 97 Trask Road. I'm one of those people might refer to affectionately that's been around for the last 35 years. And what's fundamentally different now than then was a desire by younger folks wanting everything now. As a town, we always budgeted our CIP and we spaced projects out. And it's not true that this town didn't do things. That is completely untrue. And I resent that remark or people saying that. The townspeople built schools, built additions, built town garages. These all really happened, but it didn't happen in a way where it was demanded all at once. A lot of people said during the budget process that when the library bond ends, and that was kind of the handshake the town had with its voters. We would complete the library project and we would pay for it, and then we would move on to the next thing. This 1.5 million that's sitting now, not in our capital budget as it once did, but in our operational budget, is not a shock absorber, it's a shock creator. It's creating an enormous stress on the budget. Now, I understand now suddenly, maybe we shouldn't do that next year, but that's where we are now. So I kind of agree, Mike. The town clearly wants to do the roofs, but we can't do $58 million in this budget year.
Why not?
And I think townspeople are very frustrated by this, we have to have everything now approach.
If you believed what you're saying, that is totally frustrating, but that's not true. It's not true. There's not $58 million in this budget. It's not even, it's not.
But it expanded significantly from the 1 million to 2.5. You know, it just keeps growing, yet we never execute the projects, you know, and that's frustrating to townspeople.
It is in the plan to do that exact project with that $2.5 million in the year we're talking about. If we cut that, they're not gonna have enough money to do all of that. That's that simple.
And another, with those projects, it's been stated over and over again in the Board of Ed meetings. Once you spend over $2 million, you then have to pay to get the building up to code. That's why there's such an expanded cost and why the projects look like they're exploding, but that's a mandate. That's not something that people are in a dark room somewhere talking about, how can we get a little bit more? That's the state saying, If you spend $2 million on a renovation, you now have to bring it all up to code, which then is the HVAC. Because as soon as you break into that roof, it's gonna be more than $2 million. So there's HVAC, sprinkler systems, all the electrical, all the plumbing. Let's not forget the lead and asbestos that's probably in there because that building's 100 years old. So all that abatement. That's why.
Just on a note on that, there's been multiple studies done on that building, there is no asbestos in that building. It's been gone over multiple times.
What building are you talking about?
All. Under the
Hundred percent not
patent
true.
administration, they did a complete.
That is absolutely false, 100% false. We have an asbestos report sitting in the office,
Says there is asbestos there now.
100%.
All right,
Thanks for breaking news, Pete.
that's what I was told from previous administrations, is that they had done a study and there is not asbestos. Right, so I was going with the information I had.
Michael Koo, Clover Springs again. I think Pete Litigious laid bare a critical concept about the human behavior here. I don't necessarily agree with his comment that the young people want everything right now, but he's tapping into something important, and that's perception. An older crowd, a generationally older crowd typically sees the younger crowd's way of doing things as being new and sometimes inappropriate or egregious or disrespectful, and that is somewhat a generational thing. We all deal with it with our parents telling us as teenagers that we're acting like idiots. Then we become parents and we tell our teenagers they're acting like idiots. And I know I'm making a little bit of a joke about that, but it is an important thing about human behavior, and you can see it in this last referendum vote. There was an outpouring of resistance to this budget increase by predominantly demographically an older group of people in town versus the younger group of people in town. And maybe their message was, you young people want everything now. I don't know, because I didn't talk to all those people. I've interviewed them. But then that ties in with something that Walter said earlier, which I think is important not long ago, was that if we dig too deeply into education, not only hurting the program, but then we're going to inspire the people who support that to vote down our new number. And so it kind of looks like what you have is if you go for too much of a tax increase, you get a certain crowd of people in town, a certain demographic to say, I'm resistant to that. And they speak up and vote no. If we go too much the other direction, you're gonna get a different demographic of people who are gonna speak up and say, whoa, you're cutting into, even if it is really, we're the younger people, we want it now. They're gonna say, hey, you're taking away my want it now. I'm not sure that's actually the thing that's happening, but just the example. So I don't really have to repeat it all. So I think, I think discretion, which is probably what you're all wrestling with. Discretion is gonna have to, it's gonna have to be a little bit here, a little bit there, and some of that little bit is taxes are going up. And that is just the way it's
Well, we
gonna
know
be.
that, we know.
I hate it too. I don't want my tax bill to go up anymore.
We all hate it.
Right,
And it's gotta go up. Some of us can afford it, a lot can't.
I agree.
Some of us think we can afford it and we're gonna end up getting fired in the next year. That happens too. One, I wanna touch on one thing that Pete said too about the library and the library bond and the $200,000 a year that we've been paying approximately for the library. We now have over $200,000 in requests for repairs to that 20-year-old library alone. Just, so we could just keep spending $200,000 a year on that library, probably forever. Just like we should have been spending money on the schools all along, and then maybe this wouldn't be such a drastic change, but this, you can't build something and then just let it sit there. And I don't know why we haven't learned that.
Well, the repair costs are gonna be more than what was voted down to build the new school just this past year. So that shows you the kicking the can down the road effect.
It's the second and third order effects.
Yeah, Bob Schaber, 17 Jared Sparks Road. Been in town for 30+ years. And the community has gotten addicted to very low tax increases or no tax increases at all. Over that time, the town was not able to invest in itself. Much to the admiration, I guess, of the townspeople. Well, over that time, the buildings that are owned, maintenance wasn't kept up. The schools got older. And now, oh my gosh, we have to spend more money? Why can't we have another budget of 0.5% or, no percent? And I remember seeing Peter at all those meetings. He was on the boards and such. Fighting, we have to keep it low. We have to keep it low. Well, you keep it low when you're not investing in the community. And sooner or later, you need to invest in the community. Because that's what we're all about.
So what about tonight?
About tonight.
I don't know.
Well,
wondering.
Go home and think about this, have another meeting soon. That's one option. But, you gotta show some movement, I think. Yeah, but not to the point where we.
Schedule.
This is the calendar.
So what do people feel an acceptable level as far as the rate increase goes?
Well, what I think, so. I need something to get on a piece of paper, yeah, somebody else can take a stab, so.
Both budgets were voted down for a reason, so. Again, we can use this framework here. If not, if nobody wants to vote on that. Then the next meeting we need to come up with some kind of framework so that we can move forward, we end discussion.
It'd be good to have dates too.
Huh?
It would be good to have dates,
Yeah.
like when the town meeting would be and when the referendum would be. And we'll try to work backwards from that.
Okay, so is there any taste for passing these steps here? 1 through 5, you can put your 3.5 in.
I just don't see why we need to, I guess.
I think we need to come up with a number on ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, I think we need a number for.
And it's gonna get us to the same place. We're gonna vote on it. Either gonna pass or fail.
But how do we get to that number? I mean, there is no framework, there is no framework to get to the number.
Well, this doesn't help us with that. We're doing the hard work right now.
I think
Yeah.
the same process we used to get to the numbers we used before, we just obviously have to dig in a little bit deeper.
What I'd like to avoid is going line by line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that.
I don't want to do
Yeah.
that at all.
I agree, I don't think we need to do that, and like you said, that is
Yeah,
in effect us telling people. Or it appears that we're telling people you have to take it from here. Even though really what we were just trying to do is see. what
I know, and
was.
we got some stuff happening with that, you know, when we had to, but.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, you know, there was a lot of stuff that, you know, there were concessions and quite a bit, but it didn't make it, so. I think we need to do a little more to get it to make it. Yes, Bill, that we got to do. Yes, Bill. Yeah,
I
thought it was so.
I think Mike's comment about finding the balance is what you're looking for. And I think he's right in the fact that if you go real deep, you're gonna have an army of parents in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the number that you're proposing, Walter, is within reason. I'm not speaking for the board, I'm speaking as a superintendent. But from the standpoint of if you're including the 58 in there, and you're asking them to cut an additional $50,000, I think they're gonna have to come up with how to do that. And it's not 250, sorry, Bruce, it's not $250,000. That would be really, really challenging. I think the other part of that is losing the money out of CIP. I understand that. It's the Board of Ed getting hit again, based upon what we heard from the first selectman. But with the understanding that you are gonna have to bond next year if you're gonna do roof projects in HVAC, and that's gonna have to turn around pretty quick.
But we need to seriously get moving on that kind of stuff.
Agreed 100%. And now with the facilities information in, and that first project coming in being exactly what Jason was talking about, where if you just do the roof, you're okay. But if you do the roof and anything else and you go over that $2 million, you're going to have to bond and you're gonna have to put some money away. So you'll have just under 2.5 million. If you turn that 1.5 million out to what he's saying is 1,375,000, right? Stuff, taking 125,000 off. At least it's manageable and it's not hitting the operating. It's not perfect, but there's balance. It's some money. It brings the mill rate down to your 5% increase overall. It just impacts the Board of Ed in the total, but on the operating side, it's $50,000.
And I'll make one comment. Remember when we made a comment about like the person in the senior center, remember what turned up?
Yeah.
I think the message was loud and clear. I can envision that happening.
Oh,
with
100%.
Parents,
Yeah.
I can't.
Oh, I agree.
And they can get feedback on priorities from parents and feedback from community members. What do you think that if there is another $50,000 cost, what do you believe it should be? I could make recommendations, but it's the board's decision and it's gonna be community feedback that could do it. If you think that's a number that is going to be, it still meets needs. It's not exactly what the board is looking for, but it meets needs. And you think it's gonna pass, and maybe that's the stretch point. That's where you get to. I think Steph's point in the beginning is probably the most important. This is not going away. That budget with the outplacements that we have is gonna be that budget for years to come. I do expect that. But there's balance in that. I think the full 250 is plus the 58 is way too much. I think if you want to walk away tonight and make a motion where you're doing the 108 and the 125 and you're applying the 200, I do think that I can explain that to the Board of Ed as better. It's an option that would only really reduce their budget $50,000 because they've already gotten 58.
Alan Ayers on the screen.
Hi, Alan Ayers, 38. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we missed your
Alan
address.
Alan Ayers, 38 Timber Lane. I'm just trying to figure out what we're actually trying to do here. Are we trying to operate a functioning town, or are we trying to hit a mandated number? I mean, people keep talking about mandates all the time, but you guys are setting a mandate for spending. And I know you're saying that it's like the people's responsibility to pay attention. I received 2 text messages from the Connecticut GOP about what our budget was. I mean, so you can say people voted no, but they're voting on what they're hearing. All right. And if it was the other way around, I know people can send out flyers. I know people can get involved and get the people. I have a copy of a flyer, I'll bring to the next meeting that says say no to a $60 million school. we can do $10 million over 10 years, which was just a complete lie. We all know that now. And it's signed on the bottom by the first selectman, Peter Tanaka. We know, the leader of the Republican Town Commission is there every night talking about this. The whole point of living in a town is having a functioning town. What we should do is we have to figure out what we need to have a functioning town, and what we need to have a functioning town going forward, and then reach the people and tell them this is why we need to pay this money, is so we can have a functioning town. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Mike?
Mike McCool, Springs again. I missed the first couple of hours of the meeting. I apologize, but I'm assuming there were discussions with the latest revenue updates and general fund balance, all that kind of stuff. And was there discussion about some of the projects like that are in capital or in the budget that look like aren't gonna happen this year?
We didn't get into that tonight.
It's not many.
Okay, well, there are a couple that, and I mean, the people in the firehouse will probably shoot me, but I think Millington Hill has $110,000 in CIP. They've already come and asked for it and been told no.
And that got rolled into the 200.
Oh, that was gonna
That's-
get carried forward. That was gonna get carried forward into the next year.
Yeah, so that's already gone.
Okay, so that's not currently in a. Okay, that fund, those funds actually get moved forward to the next year.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Okay, I did not, I probably was at the meeting when that happened, but I didn't remember the math working that way.
Yeah,
What about the $60,000 that wasn't used by the school building committee? Is that already in the forecast?
that's in the fund balance.
Okay, so it's already
It's in
been
the
accounted
reserve
for
fund.
in your planning?
Yeah,
Okay,
And there's a number coming from you guys, but I don't think you arrived at what it was of unspent money you guys had from the.
So it's still a work in progress with the architect, and I don't know where they stand on that.
okay, so, thank you, that answers that question.
Thank you, Arthur.
So, as Bruce has so eloquently put so many times, the Board of Education budget was voted down. I have a concern with Phil's suggestion, not that I'm not on board with it. But if we do it that way, and it goes back on a ballot, the Board of Education number barely changes, even though behind the scenes, another cut was made, I think. So I'm on board with it. If we can make it very clear that we basically cut another $125,000 out of our budget, even though it doesn't reflect on the ballot. I don't know how you do that. That's the danger with it, is because the ballot number is really not gonna change.
I have an idea how you do it. And the way would be for the chair of the Board of Finance, chair of the Board of Ed, superintendent, the chairman of the Republican Town Committee, chairman of the Democratic Town Committee, who I think I saw online as well. If there's a message that goes out that's unified to everyone that says, this is what's happened, the budget failed, we made these changes, nobody likes this, everyone's unhappy, that's the sign of a good compromise, honestly. And if you do that, I think it has a chance of passing. If people are gonna undermine it and misrepresent it, then it won't pass.
I think it's gotta go every door direct. I mean, it really does. It's at least there's a prayer of folks who have heard about it or who voted or who didn't vote, didn't think that what their vote meant enough. Seeing at least what the elements of it are. And having a shot at delivering some context and accuracy by the leaders of the town.
All right, you want to schedule subsequent meetings?
One quick question, because it's a valuable point, is we need to get something put out. We also need to know how we're gonna pay for that, because there is a cost associated with sending something else. I know that we have, in the Board of Finance budget, we have $1,200 contingency. And we also have $100 for advertising. And $100 or $250 for supplies. I think we could probably pony that up for this year to get this information out, however we have to get it out.
So down at the scholarship fund, they send those cards out every year. We're like. a
Scholarships? Yeah. They don't get
So
any.
you look at something like in that format, is that what you're?
Yeah, I see.
Oh,
Yeah.
CROG, we did ours for SBC through CROG. And the printing, the cost was,
A lot lower.
it was significantly lower. I think we did a postcard for $300 to $400.
$300 to $400, something for.
I mean, you're limited on space, but it's,
And how many did that get you, Phil?
was that, sorry?
Yeah, how many did that get you?
It was everybody, every mailing address in town.
Could I just point out, despite the suggestion being very good, Christine, I think you have to separate the political party leaders from the town. As far as
Right.
like how it's funded and all that, because the political party leaders signing off on it would be seen as some sort of political message. And that, I think you have to keep the funding for that separate and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying in concept.
Yes.
Well, something could go out though from the chairs of Board of Finance, the Board of Education, and the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
But I think you guys collaborating on the same message or, being a single message, but all those people behind it would make a big difference. And at least the voter has some information in their hands to see what's driving the budget.
And then is there any kind of issue with, I mean, it's flat out Board of Finance function to form the budget and inform the people on the budget. So there's nothing that would keep us from using our miscellaneous expenses budget for that, right?
Well, we're right, and I mean, I don't think there'd be any problem with it at all. It's, we're working in service of the town to get a functioning budget.
That's what I'm
passed
saying, I
and
just wanna make
action.
sure.
Yeah, I think so.
that we're in consensus about that.
I mean,
That
it's
wouldn't cause any
informational, it's
issues.
not gonna be,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just a fact.
so then we just gotta get all of them in the room to sit down and write a letter.
Yeah, Bob Shabbat, 17 Jared Sparks Road. I've been waiting for this to happen for 30 years. Please surprise me this time. Otherwise, you're just talking about kicking the can down the road again.
Christine?
Christine South is Jerry Sparks from. I think in your contingency, help me, memory, you put that in last year to help registrars because we didn't know what was gonna go on with early voting. We now know what's gonna go on with early voting if the budget passes. We don't need that contingency. Part of your contingency fund.
So we can either cut it or spend it.
You guys, do you feel like you've got enough experience now to say what the impact is?
We're getting there, yes. But again, I think,
We're not talking about wiping it out anyway, we're talking about a sliver of
made
it.
that recommendation
But
last
yes.
year to help registrars for early voting. He recommended Board of Finance put in $10,000.
Oh, yeah. I believe I did.
I think,
We put 15 in.
Based on what we paid per vote on the last, probably vote.
And Peter, could you talk to the town attorney about this as well?
Yes, I can.
And see if that's legitimate, and if anybody else has a framework that they'd like to go with, might consider submitting it to Peter so that can be looked at as well. Donna?
I think you have a pretty good idea, and I heard some really good discussion, and I am wondering if there is a motion that you would put out tonight, in the interest of time, because then we have to go to, Board of Ed budget and to Peter to make his, decisions. And, I thought, and Phil thought it would be, doable if the Board of Ed, budget number, and I can tell you what it is if you want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Christina. So the Board of Ed budget. Okay, so, the expenditure number that failed was $9,877,772. The new motion is going to be a decrease of $108,555, and the new expenditure number is going to be $9,769,217. That's that.
Okay, and then
then what
the
about?
selectmen,
Okay, so the general government budget,
general government.
Probably ought to do those as two different votes.
yes.
Yeah, but we can still get the.
We're getting the
numbers.
411.
Yes, this is just the 411, general government budget that failed, $7,199,808.
One hundred and what?
Yeah, 808 on the end. The new budget number, decreasing that by $125,000, is going to be $7,074,808.
So, so I'm gonna make first motion, which would be.
Yeah.
Well, wait.
Oh,
I'm
I
missing
just-
something on
two
that.
questions. So what are the percentages?
The Board of General Government percent is 2.5% increase. Board of Education is a 6.8% budget increase. When all three budgets are added together, it is a 5% increase in spending, or a 1.73 mill rate increase.
That's 1.73 mill rate increase?
Versus
Yes.
what-
1.73, and it was,
It was 34.91.
which was 2.75.
Yes,
So it's
correct.
down more, a little over a mil.
Correct. It's a little over a mill that we lowered it.
The general government number, I don't know if it's just getting late, or could you just read that again, the original one?
Was $7,199,808.
Thanks.
The new one's 7,074,808.
Yes,
Okay.
And that put us somewhere in a, well, 5-something%,
5 total.
Five total.
5 exact,
And
okay,
that
yep,
costs for the fund
so
balance.
many numbers.
Yeah, that's with increasing the fund balance another 200,000.
yes, increasing fund balance.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I was gonna mention that the town voted down.
Talent also started at a different number.
Yeah,
Who's making the motion?
I'll make the motion. The first motion is to, reduce the Board of Ed requested budget to $9,769,217.
second,
All those in favor? Can you do a roll call?
Yes.
oh, yeah. Melissa, Melissa.
Thanks, Deb.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm like, it's late. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm so sorry. Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Summers.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
No.
Mr. Parsell.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Mr. Miles. Okay. Yeah, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5-1 in favor.
All right, we have a motion for general government budget. The new, I'll make the motion. So the motion is that we accept the new budget of $7,074,808 for a 2.5% increase. I can do a roll call. I do all second.
Wait,
Okay, seconded.
And we're doing another roll call vote. Ms. Summers? Yes. Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Parsell?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Melhouse?
Yes.
And Melissa?
Yes.
That's all in favor, motion passed.
Done?
We also should have a motion for the application of fund balance. And to $900,000.
For $700,000.
I make a motion that we increase the fund balance from 700,000 to 900,000. To be applied.
Second. Roll call vote? Is there any discussion? Sorry.
I think the message is no.
Ms. Summers? Yes. Oh, yeah. Ms. Melhouse?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Parsell?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
No?
And Melissa?
Yes.
And that passes 5-1.
So before it was an 8.6% mill rate increase, and now it's a 5% mill rate increase. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
It's not, it's six.
What did you call,
Yeah,
what did you say?
5%.
Liz? Over. It was originally 8.6, right?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, is there anything else on that? Jim? Is there any correspondence? Anybody present to speak? Public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited. The time and appropriateness of comments to maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain decorum. Do we have anybody? Nick?
Hey, Philip, 49 Myrtle. First, I want to say thank you for public participation you guys allowed going on. I think that helps people attend, being that their voice can be heard. So that being said, I do have concern that the Board of Finance didn't really listen to the vote. It didn't take serious the budget reductions that need to happen. Seems a little rushing through this here by 5% in mill rate increase. We can't have a functional government with limited government and reduced spending. What conversations have happened from the Board of Finance to Tammy and Jeff when we knew about the Board of Finance expenses when they increased? And what was their feedback when you guys reached out to them? The unanimous vote from board members, I would caution as a talking point, as I'm sure those that voted for it wanted to give the people an opportunity to at least vote on it instead of keeping it from the people. I know, I'm pretty sure there are some people that voted yes, that just voted yes so the people can vote, not necessarily they were 100% behind it. So I caution that talking point. I agree with concerns with Steph's comments earlier, minimizing the voice of approximately 1/6 of the people that voted. I feel that's very wrong to minimize those people. I want to say that, yes, I'm one that challenges everything, and I'm just one person with a small voice in town, though I do understand that there's compromise. That said, reducing the mill rate increase by 50% is where we need to be. And even that is still too high, but I understand this compromise. The Board of Finance needs to be focused. It'll probably be around 3 to 4% mill rate, just like many other towns. Tonight, I was looking at other towns, and many towns are under 4%, some even at 0%. That's unrealistic for us. The Board of Education or any other board is gonna always say there's no room to cut. That's government 101 when it comes to money. They'll always throw out the contracts as an excuse. That's what a headline is, not the details of that they can actually reduce staff and such, just like towns across America have to do. Board of Education sending money back to the general budget early this evening was talked about. That's not something to brag about, especially when the buildings are neglected. purposely. I agree with public participation needing to be more. I caution with saying, with the saying to educate the people when it comes from elected people that want to increase budget. It's manipulating them to be on board with this. People are smart and understand that if government doesn't get its increase, spending then from the government has to be cut somewhere. So to kind of diminish what the adults can understand is inappropriate. Thank you.
Mike, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, but I've lost track. I'm processing what I just heard and I've lost my point. So go ahead with somebody else.
James Marshall?
Hi, guys. James Marshall, 46 Fisher Hill Road. Just two things. Thank you very much for your efforts tonight. I know it's a difficult process, so good work generally across the board. I am quite frankly still processing and quite frankly somewhat appalled by many of the comments from the chair tonight, but we'll digest those over the coming weeks. I do want to say one thing that I do, speaking to the Board of Selectmen that I believe are still on the call, and I know Pete's in the room, that I look forward to an open and honest discussion about where cuts to the CIP program expenditures should happen at your meeting on Monday. So I look forward to that healthy debate, and I hope that we find a reasonable consensus and really honestly start to open the dialogue moving forward as to how to advance the many needs beyond the drop in the bucket we're doing already. Thanks very much, guys.
James, Arthur?
Arthur Christensen, 14 Birch Meadow Lane. You know, if you want to talk about talking points, there's a talking point, like frankly, on my side of the aisle, that's called fiscal responsibility. And you know, the pesky part of that part is responsibility. So is it responsible when you have a leak in your house, just throw a bucket under it and say, that's fine, I can just empty the bucket every once in a while. They got emptied every month, then every week, then every couple days, and then the pipe bursts. So wouldn't it have been cheaper to fix it in the first place for a couple of bucks instead of having your basement flood for $2,000? That's where we are. Bob eloquently put it, Christina put it, you've been kicking the can down the road for a long time. And I got on the Board of Education to put my foot in front of that can and stop kicking it down the road and finally do something that this town needs to do for its littlest members, for the ones who can't fend for themselves. That's our job. And that's what I plan to do. That's what I'm gonna continue to do. That's why I oppose these cuts, because again, it's not needs-based. Our budget is not, it's been needs-based for a long time. As Brianna said, how many years was it under 2%? During those good years, why wasn't it higher? We could have taken some of that money and done some of these repairs. It's too late now, but we gotta get it done. And if you can imagine it gets worse, it could get worse if we don't do something.
Thank you, Arthur. Do we have anybody else prepared to speak?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Peter
if you don't mind.
Yeah, Peter Talk has been recognized, and then I'll get back to you, James. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I was monitoring the meeting from upstairs. I do agree with the postcard and in concept, agree with it wholeheartedly. We just need to make sure if that happens, it happens very quickly. Because we're gonna be re-entering the blackout period once we have a town meeting. I understand that you wanted a hearing and then a meeting. If we do that, we have to add at least 8 days between the two. And then
I don't know that it needs to be a hearing
I think
Exactly.
that what I was gonna say is I believe that we could do,
together.
do the
Yeah,
work of the hearing at the meeting
right.
and roll it into one.
Ask the town attorney about that one.
I
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, because, yeah, we
Yeah,
should be able
our
to
town
do a
attorney
truncated,
is.
a truncated process, yeah.
Yeah, I believe we cut the attorney budget too, so we'll see what we can do.
So once you and the Board of Selectmen finalize your own, why don't you reach out to Brianna and I, so the three of us can get together?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Peter? Or wait, I told James I'd come back to him first. James Marshall.
Apologies for stepping on you earlier, guys. Sometimes it's hard to follow the thread. I just wanted one additional comment, that I appreciate the fact that a joint letter is being discussed. I very much think that the chair of the CIP committee should also be included in that public outreach, because it's a very big part of, the discussion here in town, and it should be recognized that support, if it's there, should be recognized as well in that joint letter and communication. So thank you.
Thanks, James. Peter?
I want to strongly disagree with the first selectman, with all due respect to Pete. The public hearing is a very different event than a town meeting. The public hearing is where we want to learn more about what's going on. And that's very important. I think we've heard that tonight. Everyone feels the need to have more information about the budget, understand it better, and I agree with all of that. But we take actions at a town meeting because we have a legislative form of government where the town meeting is our legislature. That's how we do things. As unsettling as that is to many who would like to defer everything to experts and consultants. One of the frustrations I think some of the old residents like myself have. We need to have a public hearing. If it takes more time, so what? Why can't we have a public hearing, learn more about the budget, and then go to our town meeting and decide what we want to do? And oh, by the way, not a town meeting with a call written by the attorney that says we can only do one thing. It should be an open-ended town meeting where we can discuss and take actions as a town. That's what we used to do. And we moved away from that. And that's created a lot of frustration for people who don't understand why we can't know more about our budget. The public hearing comes so late in your budget process. It is the very end. And then, oh, we gotta rush, we gotta pass this thing, it's gotta go, tax bills have to go out. There's no time in this process for the townspeople. And for that reason, I would like to see us have more information in a public hearing. And then from that public hearing, proceed to a town meeting. One of the things I noticed at this year's town meeting was there was quite a reaction to this budget. It was completely ignored. There was no follow-up action by anyone because there's seemingly no time. I think we need to take more time. So people know more and can act as someone suggested responsibly.
Mike Coop, Clover Springs. First of all, I think the question about the hearing first is appropriately going to get answered by the first selectman verifying the process with the town attorney. There are rules that say whether we have to or not. We'll find that answer first. After that happens, then I kind of have mixed feelings. Pete loves the town hearing. It's one of his favorite forms of government, and I'm not picking on him for that. But he would use it in more ways than a lot of us would, and it would potentially slow down our processes. I don't know what the balance is there, but I would say the public hearing did its job. The public hearing gave the people an opportunity to come ask the questions, and then they spoke in the referendum. This meeting row and this new budget is a reaction to that word from the townspeople. Some will agree with it, some will say it's too high, some will say it's too low. That's the process. So in my mind, I'm not sure we really need to go back through each step of the process, back to the public hearing. So if the town attorney determines it's not required, in my mind, we keep on chugging. The people who are interested, who came to the last hearing and are following this process are still following this process, and they're gonna express their opinion. There's much more, we're not getting a lot of people to the hearing, other than the people who are engaged and already have put their effort into attending and participating and paying attention. I think that it isn't as important to service as the first hearing was. The first hearing set this course of events. And so we move on to the process, and hopefully these other ways of communicating gets other people from the town involved. Who are probably not gonna come to the hearing anyway, fortunately.
Thank you, Mike. James Marshall.
Maybe not.
All right, James is right there.
Sorry, it was just left up.
Good night, James. Okay, do you think for good and welfare? You know, I'd just like to say, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, participating in this, people who are on Zoom. We came up with the budgets, It's not what everybody wanted, but in the end, the voters are gonna decide if that's what they want or not. So, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting for this evening. We have a second?
And second.
Second, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Come on, Mike, that's it. And I have another. All right, I think all they need to know is. I'm going with David. Yeah. Yes. I did look at it and there is a note on my desk. And so.
Oh, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see what
Thank you
everyone
for
says.
volunteering.
There's different details.
Yeah. Well,
My kids are doing to me what I.
A lot of Steve people do like.
They're going to.
Well,
Yeah, they're going.
I went out for lunch one day, I just went to get some emails and I just. I can't even throw these out.
My kids are going.
See, check this out. Telling me on this forum.
Just with different things.
They're convinced that we're getting.
Yeah,
that's.
You know.
One year they'll be right. Yeah, but.
That's 20 a night.
Yeah, every year, hey, well, we have this many hurricanes.
Like
In the year. Well, he said, paying percentages, that's all, percentage. So they may not have. Right.
Yeah.
I think it was in the same age. That was a neat part. I was here all meeting. But brother, I was walking around. Yeah. That was.